next match in front of us. And honestly, when I was coordinating with KP on which games to cover, I was telling him that I would like to do the Wam01 match. Because I did not expect Scatterbrained to take down Numedan, because I've been watching Beastie play against Numedan off of stream, and Numedan is scary. But maybe the tournament jitters got him down a little bit, and Scatterbrained was just too good. So you actually mentioned to me that Scatterbrained has been good. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What is contributing to the rise of the Scatterbrained?
I think, Scatterbrained is undoubtedly has improved immensely over the last year, especially, I would say. I think early on especially, I'm not sure how much that is still the case, but Scatterbrained being from Belarus, of course, just like Anatand as well. I do know that Anatand, especially last year, took him under his wing somewhat, and I think has really, really helped him improve quite a bit. And you can see that being manifested here. I'm pretty sure that's still somewhat the case. They must still talk about the game a fair bit, as I see a lot of Anatand in Scatterbrained. Not only in terms of the way he plays as a playstyle, but also strategies as well. A lot of the same kind of builds as well I see are coming out for him. Stuff like Jushi on water. I've seen Scatterbrained attempt against me recently in KPMM, but also other things like I said, Lancaster strategy revolving around White Tower and those guard. So clearly there's a lot of overlap there, and Scatterbrained has improved a lot as a result of not only his own hard work, of course, but with the help of Anatand as well. And he has had some great results. I do think he struggles a little bit still with consistency, which I do think is quite normal at this level, at this sort of semi-pro level, just below that sort of top 8 in that top 16, top 20 threshold that I myself am in, and played like Scatterbrained, obviously several other names there as well. I think the main issue for a lot of us at this type of bracket is that consistency, having that unanimous understanding and comfort in these tournament settings to keep delivering the results that sort of we know we're capable of and that we can often do in places like the ladder and practice. But tournaments are very different, and well done to Scatterbrained for having won over in Numedan in what I know that was a very close set, 3-2. So that must have been a nail biter. I'll definitely look at it after today without a doubt. And he proved himself and is now has an even bigger hurdle to cross in the form of one of the Canadian powerhouses. Wham!
Well, honestly, if you watch that series, just get your steering wheel out because you're going to be steering. It was a wild one. We were watching it and experiencing it firsthand, and things just went a little crazy. But Scatterbrained, he looks scary on water, unsurprisingly. And I feel like this is exactly what you want to see from up-and-coming people, to see them force players to play water, where they're actually outshining a lot of these top people. So Scatterbrained, hoping to see him around a lot more. But guys, we actually have Rus JD waiting for us. So, Myriad, let's take it away and hop on in.
We have just witnessed Borderland in our earlier set with CSO showing a dominant performance up against Lucifron, but now we see it again with two different players in play this time round as we load into Borderlands, the Masters of Steel qualifier number 2. Wham! In the color Rus. In the color red. There you go. It's just checking if people are paying attention.
Yes, yes.
That's what I'm doing. Naturally, let's see if people notice that. But it is Wham in the color red playing the Rus, spawning in the eastern side of the map, and his opponent, the up-and-comer Scatterbrained in the color yellow, piloting Jeanne d'Arc just like CSO did in their last series. And I have to say, Rus getting through, it's quite something. I have to take a quick look at the draft again because we just missed it there briefly. I assume maybe a KT took a ban priority potentially for Scatterbrained, understanding their strength on water. And I do gotta say, I do feel like KT is probably more of a, what would people think, almost a free win on water than maybe even Rus is on land. But that's definitely up for debate. So difficult opening game here for Scatterbrained. But I gotta say, his JD is not to be underestimated.
And honestly, with the amount of sheep that Wham's got, he is in a very comfortable position. So we'll see if that JD Prowess is going to be enough. Because if you are JD and you... Oh, I just realized. Oh, wait, yes, Scatterbrained. Wait. Why does it feel like... Oh, my goodness. No, never mind. My brain lost track of the scouts. Guys, rewind. First we have the color Roos, and now we have the scout switch. They do get to meet. We'll see how the boys pass by one another, showing a little bit of what they have, not being afraid to hide the beautiful loot that he is taking home. But Scatterbrained, a little bit of a disadvantage here, because JD is not a civ that goes for their second scout, or gets into any good position like that. And now, he's going to be a starved JD. Now, my question is, does JD still have that ability to actually deny pro scouts? Or do you think he's in real trouble purely based off of the sheep?
This is already a horrible start here for Scatterbrained. Like, you can't sugarcoat this. I mean, only 4 sheep so far up against this Roos, and this is just the kind of risk you run into. This is one of almost countless reasons why Roos is often one of the close to 100% ban rate civs alongside HRE there in these games. You know, this early sheep tempo, it can be difficult enough if you get slightly unlucky with the standard 1-1 scout split for most civilizations, but with Roos they can go up to 2, often 3 scouts as well. It can get even tougher for them, and the worst thing that can happen up against Roos is if they spot your scout early on, because then they can just adapt their path with their second and third scouts in such a way as to just completely block you off from the rest of the map, and the result of which you can see here, the sheep split. I mean, I do want to see it, but I feel like, we might need a horror tag on the stream or something when we see the numbers.
Now, with horror tags or not, Scatterbrain is not feeling like it, actually. Myriad, he says, I'm just gonna do what Roos doesn't want me to do and make the deer inaccessible. And I feel like the move he's made here is actually quite surprising, but at the same time, it's probably the best move for him. Roos doesn't have that early aggression, any units that they can pump out. While JD, on the other hand, she is going to be bringing the fight to you. So I feel like this is probably the best move for him in terms of actually getting the food that he needs to get a few knights on the board, without him potentially having to invest in pro scouting.
Exactly, like this is definitely a prudent choice from Scatterbrained. We might potentially still see pro scouts from him. It's something we just have to gauge. Just because, like, sure, if he does get this deer pack here initially, which is, the level of unit commitment from Roos up against JD and French is not usually very high, because JD and French are typically favored in that feudal age, just having the superior knights, thanks to, of course, the additional damage after charge that French royal knights have access to, as well as the later on chivalric healing unlocked by the upgrade. Of course, it makes it so that Roos typically wants to go castle as soon as possible up against them, where their strength really starts to come through with their superior economy in that mid game. But Scatterbrained, moving out onto this day is going to at least deny most likely that deer pack almost fully from Wham initially, at least. He might even look to drop a tower soon enough, potentially. But, despite my doom-giving words earlier for Scatterbrained, definitely do not count him out just yet. I don't know if you recall, we have seen a very similar matchup, I believe in Qualifier 1 last week. It was indeed, which we cast. I think it was alongside Sass, if I'm not mistaken. We saw Papipo's French up against Anatan's Roos on Relic River, where Papipo actually lost his scout very early on in the game, giving over a large amount of sheep over to Wham. I think he had even less sheep than Scatterbrained had in this game, but still, he made it work. Now, it's worth noting that there were a lot less deer on that map than here. However, if that game goes to show, it is very much possible to do a lot of damage if you are aggressive with JD, or French for that matter, in this matchup.
And he gets a first villager kill already. The scout, he's not going to be enough to defend against the knight, but this is now a knight that cannot be used for quite some time. And I know a lot of pros are saying it's not worth losing a knight for that first villager. And yes, he didn't lose it, Where do you land on this, Myriad? Do you think it's worth it to sacrifice that first knight for a villager?
I think it depends somewhat on the state of the matchup. If it's a matchup where there's going to be a lot of fighting in the feudal age, then I definitely don't think it's worth it. Now, I still think it's not worth it, even if, something like Rus here, where they're likely going to go Castle Age very quickly. You'd still rather get 2 villages for a knight, and some players even then question whether that's actually worth it. But it's not as bad as if this was against something like Delhi, for instance, right? Where having that initial mass when it comes to containing the sacred sites can really make the difference between, what is a triple cap and a no cap for Delhi. Saving the knight just in time, Scatterbrained, definitely happy with that little trade. The knight might be out of commission from any kind of dive play for a while, but he definitely has enough health to still stop any kind of scout shenanigans on one of those deer packs. Now Scatterbrain recognizes that and smartly starts patrolling this center large deer back here.
What I absolutely love is the fact that he went no pro scout into High Traders. So him getting those 3 deer at the start and getting a lot of sheep, he's still pretty happy with the loot, and he thinks that this is going to be enough to start that shenanigans of what we've seen with horse archers. Now, double archery range coming through, and I'm honestly a little scared here for Scatterbrained, because I don't think Scatterbrained is emotionally prepped for handling an 8-minute Castle Age Rus.
Yes, this is always a threat possibility with Rus in this instance when they just have so much access to food even without pro scouts. I mean, Wam, this is just a beautiful adaptation here by Wam, right? I already have so much food that I just don't actually need to get pro scouts yet. So there's just a lot more value to be gained here from just getting that castle age ASAP, getting those horse archers out, pushing those knights away, and just abusing the fact that Scatterbrained has virtually no food to his name outside of that deer pack and his initial berries, which I think he might already be thinking of starting to go on as those deer do start running out. And Wam can just very easily go into pro scouts soon after this once he starts gaining some map control. And yeah, just like you mentioned, it's gonna get really, really scary for Scatterbrained here very fast in this game. And Scatterbrain's actually reinvesting into knights here, which is an option JD and French do have here. You can look to play a heavy knight mass initially up against those horse archers, just to prevent any kind of early base exit from the horse archers, because the charge does come in. The horse archers do have to be very careful against the knights, because when that charges come in, you can't afford to kite up against that. You have to wait for the charge to go on cooldown, and then you can start shooting and kiting with the horse archers. Otherwise, you eat that charge in the face, and you can see it does a lot of damage.
And these knights are feeling quite confident, but just getting an upgrade for your tower makes this a very hard position for him to be in. JD is taking quite a bit of damage from these horse archers too, and that mobility denial has been pretty wild. We see Chivalry also coming out, so it feels like he is going to stay here for a little bit longer. We do have knights here on the deer to just ensure they don't get eaten for free, but these knights are taking a lot of damage, and it just doesn't feel like Scatterbrained is going to be able to keep this pressure up, especially of what the state that we're looking at right now. The JD will not go down yet, but she does go on 0 HP, and a scout will be the guy taking her down after all. Is he?
Oh yeah, the healing coming in clutch just there at the end, and the wolf just helps out. Of course, Rus quite friendly historically with the wildlife on the map, as once again the little wolf whisperer that is that scout calls upon the aid in order to help finish off the scout JD, but it's not like it was necessary. The scout was gonna finish her off with one more tap of his little plastic sword with the amount of damage that they tend to do typically. But we see the horse arch numbers are building rapidly here for Wam, right? And Scatterbrained, again, in a similar spot to how Lucifer found himself in the last game on this map in our last series. There's this trouble of you kind of have to keep making units to control this horse archer mass or risk giving away the entirety of the map control to your opponent. opponent, but doing so only delays your age up further to a point where eventually the tech disadvantage is really going to hurt, and you can see the damage coming through even without Steel Arrow. Although nice wraparound here by Scatterbrained, gets some nice charges in on the horse archers, trims the mass just a little bit, low HP bars on those horse archers, and this is something he desperately needs, but a lot more of this is what he needs, frankly, because, you know, the mass will just keep building here for Wham more and more. They're cheaper than the knights they produce, faster than the knights, I think, even with the extra production speed from the School of Cavalry. So Wham not minding too much. And you saw earlier, Scatterbrained does have Undermesh on his knights. Wham does not have Steel Arrow on his horse archers yet, but still, like, this match, horse archers can at this point two-shot the knight.
Now he's trying to keep these very active and trying to find the villagers so he actually gets some damage done. But the problem is just that mobility is showing. He does get a perfect collide here, and a few of the boys will go down. And again, beautiful, beautiful play, just thinning the numbers, as you said, but they can catch up and they can snipe down. And this is so expensive. So JD does manage to pick one of them off as well, but she's going to need a lot more XP to take down. The thing is now, if you look at the split, it looks like Scatterbrained is thinking about castle, but... Oh, I say that and then queues up a bunch more. Never mind, guys, I cursed it again. But the gold is about to run out, and he is already thinking about the next one. Our problem is, this is again an exposed gold. The moment we start going out on the map, these horse archers are going to make it very difficult. But now Scatterbrained has a pretty scary army, and these guys is going to they're going to force Wham to stay in his base, even if just for a little bit longer.
See a little Wololo attempt here as the knight does spot the relic, and the knight's going to be a little bit annoying on that warrior monk, but Wham is going to be able to respond in turn with the horse archers. One knight does get abandoned here, unfortunate little loss there for Scatterbrained. Scatterbrained does move most of his nice mass to deny this relic, but in turn, as a result of that, the trade-off is that now Wham is able to cross that mid-map threshold, and with this crossing, start putting pressure on Scatterbrained's economy in turn, as the tower is up on the deer, just over there, so the villagers will seek shelter and be safe at this point in time. But Scatterbrained, it does seem like he's still just content staying in feudal age. More and more knights in queue. We see 100 food in the bank, so clearly no intention for castle age just yet, although part of it is, of course, the food situation that is very, very present here for Scatterbrained. The food problem, I would call it for sure in this case. Now we see Wham researching pro scouts as the day do start slowly running out. Scatterbrained does move with villages here to the north side. The good thing with these outposts is, of course, the horse archers will not do much up against any kind of buildings, so that will work in Scatterbrained's favor. However, you know, when Wham starts, or if he does choose to add some knights of his own in order to further serve as a little front line for his horse archers, as well as start torching buildings, it'll get even tougher for Scatterbrained.
As you can see, Scatterbrained is spread all around the map. He's scattered around the map. With being out here on the gold, those horse archers could also do so much damage, but the knights do get a good collapse, and a few of them do go down. JD getting quite a bit of experience. We can see she's not all there yet, but she is definitely enjoying these trades. The problem is, these boys are thinning out, and they are not getting replaced as quickly as I would have expected. We do see +2 arrows coming in now, so this is going to mean that these guys do pack a lot more of a punch, but every single time he stops microing them, it's massive for Scatterbrained.
Yeah, you have to be very, very careful here as well. It's a bit of a tricky position because, you know, you're playing a powerhouse civilization. This matchup is undoubtedly pretty good for Roos. It's not horrible for JD or French for that matter, but I mean, like most matchups in the game, it's pretty damn good for Roos, right? And, you know, that sort of confidence can often lead to overconfidence in the situations where you move out too early with your horse archers, you don't expect the opponent to reinvest into knights. And we saw that manifested being here. Scatterbrained taking some pretty good initial trades here, right? Some great charges on those horse archers, thinning the mass. I mean, if left uninterrupted, this horse archer mass would have easily breached the 40 mark by now, at which point, I mean, what can you really do at that stage? But instead, I mean, the numbers aren't looking too bad. And if you look at army value, Scatterbrained is firmly in the lead.
The problem is if you are JD, or if you're playing against JD, and the Night Mass, they're expensive, but if you don't shut them down, this makes Castle Age so much harder for you to handle. And we're getting kind of close to that. We do see the food now stocking up here from Scatterbrain's side, and he will be able to go Castle. But my question is he going to be able to sustain Castle? Because yes, he's getting the food over here. Yes, a few will get picked off. But this is now getting to that point where if you lose these knights, they're gone for good. Oh, never mind. Wham lets them live. Tell your friends the tale, he says. But now, Royal Institute coming through. And 20 knights. That's going to make this a lot harder. He's only going to have the gold to get 2 upgrades or so. But he gets a beautiful engagement yet again.
Another huge charge on that mass of horse archers walking in, well, trotting, so to say, in the center of the map there for Wham. Nicely done once again by Scatterbrained. And like you mentioned, Castle Age is in now for him straight away. Veterancy gets queued up as well as Undermesh, so definitely correct priorities here for Scatterbrained. It would be great to get the Bloodlines as well, but it's so expensive. So I think these 2 upgrades in combination are definitely better than just getting Bloodlines here for Scatterbrained. And you're gonna have to buy this time here for a little while till this comes through, and you can see that Castle Age did cost Scatterbrained a fair bit of map control. Meanwhile, Wham is just vacuuming up the day at this point of the map, the day that he has access to at least, while Scatterbrained did a pretty decent job at the same time in securing some of the day for himself as well. And once Royal Bloodlines is in, once Wedge Rivets is in, then these knights will definitely do a much better job in contesting these horse archers, but the ever-present issue is still there, that without the charge, these knights can't do anything against the horse archers.
Yeah, these horse archers are so mobile, and they're actually getting a little frontline right now. We do see finally getting Boyar's Fortitude. That's going to mean that all of these cavalry units are going to be extra bit tanky. A little pseudo-royal bloodlines, but it doesn't really match up to those French knights. We know what a French knight can do. We've seen those charges, and we've also seen them in this game on the horse archers. So these guys being very squishy. The knight's going to provide a very nice front line to absorb those charges, but the numbers are still not looking that great right now. The problem is for Wham as well. He is going to eventually run out of food. Yes, he does still have some berries left, but that's not the prime resource that you're looking for. We do see Royal Bloodlines very close now, and Scatterbrained is waiting for it.
Eventually, Wham will run out of food indeed, but the bigger issue is undoubtedly Scatterbrain's food at this point in time. And Bloodlines, as you mentioned, is coming in, which will be a great piece of respite here for Scatterbrained, but at the same time, now Boyar's Fortitude is in for Wham, which, although not quite as impressive as Bloodlines, is not really that far off. And with this army mass here for Wham, we can see the army value has swung completely in his favor at this point in time. With these knights, although still weaker than the French knights, they still just serve as a padded frontline for those horse archers to really start dishing out tremendous damage up against these knights. And Scatterbrained is just sticking to his guns, continuously playing knights, which isn't optimal up against this composition against Wham, but the issue is the map, right? On a map like this, it's so open. Although you would love to play defensive and go into those arbalétriers, as well as horsemen, or maybe Jean's rider's companions here, the issue is just the mobility. The lack of mobility is so hard to offset against this Rus mass, and if you give it up, then you give up over most of the map, and if you give up most of the map, then, I mean, in a lot of cases, that's giving up the game.
Now, the knights do get a pretty good connection here, and JD is level 3, so this army is going to start getting a little bit scarier. Now, what I love to see is we're actually getting to see some of her riders, and the fight is looking pretty decent with the horse archers kiting from the back and just using the walls to their advantage. JD is doing her best at doing some range attacks and picking off these units, but the horse archers are going to be able to attack from behind the wall here, and the knights are not going to be able to do anything about it. The front line really absorbing quite a bit of damage here. Wham is still a little bit in the lead with the army, but again, it's all about that food. What are we going to struggle with in the next while? Because now Wham is still on 1,400 food per minute, while Scatterbrained, it has nosedived.
Yeah, so see, I mean, the triple the food income here for Wham, it's a dire spot to be in for Scatterbrained, and, you know, it's just the kind of thing you would expect in this matchup. And what's even worse here for Scatterbrained is that yes, he has the bloodlines, yes, he has a pretty scary Night Mass, but there's no guild hall. There's no reliable scaling factor here for him. He doesn't have JD's he doesn't have French's passive villager additional production speed here for him. So, JD is the more aggressive counterpart for French, which he has done a great job with the aggression. We can see that the destroyed value is still pretty firmly in his favor, but for how long, really, against a civilization like Rus? We see Wham. Scatterbrained has been building knights since the start of this game, essentially, and Wham only recently switched into them, but already he's more than half of the way there to matching the mass. And Wham, also behind this, getting eco upgrades as well, more springboard emplacements also on his fortresses, and after securing this wall, he's not too worried about any further run-bys, and now the berries are under threat here for Scatterbrained as well. And Wham, the lead is only building further and further.
Now, my question is just, is Scatterbrained actually going to just double down and keep this pressure going? Or is he actually going to try and make something a little bit more economic out of this? Now, with the amount of villages I see on gold, with the amount of knights he keeps having in production, I feel like he's just trying to go face. In Hearthstone, there was this build, and people would always say, what are you going to do? You're going to go face. And that's what Scatterbrained's doing. He's not thinking about an eco build. He's like, I'm just going to go and kill. Now, Wham did destroy that tower, but he's decided to opt to go and shut down what's happening here. And look at the beautiful use of these walls. There's a reason I called them Wham walls, and it's because he knows how to build them, he knows how to use them. They're his, and he's the master.
The master of Wham walling indeed, and you correctly said, Marika, that this is kind of a Hail Mary here by Scatterbrained, but it's really what he needs. He can't keep playing the scaling game up against Wham's Rus here. Not without Guild Hall, not without a second TC, not without a more reliable, solid composition behind this. So he needs to get in here, deal as much damage as he possibly can, which is going to be the case here. Charge comes in from the back of Wham's base. Scatterbrained goes directly in, right as JD calls in the Riders once again, but he is cornered. Marika, there's nothing behind this for Scatterbrained except more knights in queue, which have to cross the entirety of the map here to reinforce, and you can see just the overwhelming mass here for Wham, completely cleaning up the fight. Frankly, didn't even look close. A lot of knights did go down for Wham, courtesy of those super powered bloodline knights here for Scatterbrained, but the economy difference is absolutely astounding here in favor of Wham. The income is just huge for him, food especially, and the army numbers tell no lies. This is essentially finished.
I am so inspired by watching this. I just want to go make horse archers on ladder now. Thank you, Wham, for the walls, for the beautiful play, switching between them, and showing us that JD can be bested, especially on a map like this that's very, very open. Now, the sacred sites are on the side of Scatterbrained, but these are going to be decapped in no time. The problem is this army has no answer right now, and Scatterbrained says the answer is more knights. He keeps going for them. JD is back. She wants to get that last bit of experience to summon even more riders. But this is going to be a tough one. We'll see what he tries to do with this next fight. It could potentially be the last one.
And you have to admire Scatterbrained's persistence here, right? I mean, he started the game off on such a back foot with that unfortunate sheep split for him, but despite that, he still did his best and actually really put up a fight in this game, which I absolutely tremendously respect here. You know, he really made Wham, I think, sweat just a little bit in that initial castle phase with the night raids, with the charges on the horse archers. So I don't think he's too displeased with himself in this game so far. He put up a great fight despite the tremendous disadvantage he found himself under, not only because of the sheep split, but because of the matchup as well. So he's definitely looking strong in this series so far, but the numbers tell no lies in this game. I mean, the mass from Wham is severely overwhelming at this point in time. The economy is just bloated for him, as you'd expect from a civilization like the Rus. Wham at this point is just gonna buy this time, slowly eke out better and better trades. Doesn't necessarily have to take any risks whatsoever. The full pressure is on Scatterbrained to make something happen, which he did try earlier, but yeah, it just did not work out. Though frankly, he had no other other choice, and he did his best with what he had access to. But now Wham is just reigning supreme in this game. He's running all around the map, idling villages, forcing Scatterbrained to dance to his tune as more and more army is added here for Wham. More knights for Scatterbrained as well. The consecration from JD is really working a number in Scatterbrained's favor here. We can see despite the dire straits of the economy, Scatterbrained is still able to get out a pretty good and respectable number of knights. But for how long?
The problem is they're trying to collapse on these low HP horse archers, but there are healthy ones between them, and JD will most likely hit her level 4 in a few moments. But she will be all alone as the knights just come in pouring one by one and get picked off one by one. These horse archers, even though not the direct counter, definitely makes it look like they are. She does hit the age up, but he lets her die. Most likely gonna either call it or buy her back. Never mind. He says, I've had enough. I don't have anything to support my woman with. And he will go into the next one. But like you said, this was phenomenal by Scatterbrained. Scatterbrained really showing us that he knows how to be aggressive, he can play from behind, and he can make things happen. I honestly think that Wham will respect Scatterbrained and what he potentially can do against a player like this. So Wham needs to be careful, but he definitely looked good in that game as well.
Exactly right. I mean, Scatterbrained put up a great fight in this early game despite all odds being stacked up against them. And, it just goes to show that he still has that competitive spirit and doesn't get disheartened by, all the odds being in his favor, which does command a tremendous amount of respect, in my opinion. And it just makes me even further excited to see what he's going to bring to the table in the next game here. It's always difficult being the underdog in a series like this, not only because of the mental aspect that that your opponent is not only considered better, but potentially likely just is more consistently better as well. I mean, Wham, of course, is a seasoned veteran by this point from the very start of the game. But on top of it, of course, it's difficult being, a guest in the draft. I mean, the host, who obviously was Wham, being the highest seed, means that he will always get that first pick, and often that first pick always goes towards that top civ that is most strong, depending on the patch we are in, which outside of HRE or KT on water in this case, it is going to be Rus, which Wham takes and uses it to just deliver a swift and pretty decisive game number 1 here on Boldlands.
He showed us he's coming in fighting. And I think a lot of people are a little worried for Wham to qualify here. Not because of Wham falling down the ranks, but because of the people really working their way up. I think a lot of the people, if I'm sure in Twitch chat, will agree that there are some really worthy contenders. Today is not going to be an easy one. I just quickly want to show the bracket so people can see what we're actually up against here. So Wham Scatterbrained, that's fine, right? We have Wham Scatterbrained right now. From the bottom side, it'll be either Cat or Sassy against Starflock. But all the names we see at the top, Anatan and CSO, both of these players pretty big ones to also potentially qualify. So it's not straightforward for Wham. There's only 3 spots left. And they're going to go to the 3 best, because that's how we set up these qualifiers, to make sure that people have to consistently play good to make it through, 1 week at a time. So 2 of these players making it through, and next week, the last one, we'll see who that is. But Wham has his work cut out for him. Even players like Lucifron, we can't count them out yet, because even though Lucifron may have not made it this week, we'll see what he practices over the next one. So let's quickly go back to the draft and see what that looks like. So, wait, no, never mind. I pressed the wrong button. Here we are. So, Abysses versus Aeobids. I think we might see a pattern here.
Does seem to be a little bit of a pattern developing, right? This is a matchup that I think we're seeing for the 3rd time, at least on stream, if I'm not mistaken, in the qualifiers so far. We've seen it in the previous series, of course, between CSO and Lucifron, where CSO did come out on top victorious with the Abbasids up against Lucifron's Iobids. But now Scatterbrained is going to pilot the Iobids, and Wham is going to take control of Abbasids here on Kawasan. And frankly, I still don't know who I favor in this matchup here. I mean, it should. It's tough to say. It's tough to say because it's so similar to China's Jushi in a lot of ways that Ayurved's like Jushi has that tempo, has that early economic explosion that Abbasid takes a little while to get going, similar to how China does. But the longer it goes, I think the more difficult it gets for Ayurved, similar to how it gets for Jushi in that matchup. So I think it's going to be a question here of can Scatterbrained find that damage that Lucifer unfortunately was not able to in the last series in order to put Wham on the back foot here? Or will Wham, survive the tides of war initially that are not in his favor and just come out on top in the scaling game? But really, a lot of it is determined by that early game, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Because we've been seeing some beautiful barracks openings. We've been seeing no dock. We've been seeing double dock. I feel like with these two civilizations, you have all those choices. Most likely not a barracks, but with these two, you do get that military wing that puts out a lot of pressure early on. We'll see if this plays out similarly to the one we saw just before. So guys, let's hop on in to game number 2 on... Wait. Now I have to remember what the map is called. On Kawasan. So, on Kawasan, we'll see how these two are going to battle it out. Let's hop on in.
Here we are on Kawasan in the Masters of Steel qualifier number 2, and we are witnessing game number 2 between Wham in the color blue piloting the Abbasids up against his opponent, 3D's Scatterbrained in the color yellow, playing as the Ayubids here, and we see a little bit of a different spawn compared to the CSO Lucifron series just before this one. And this is something that can happen on Kawasan, which, we'll have to see to what extent people enjoy this and to what extent they don't, because this is more reminiscent of your typical spawn on most Age of Empires 4 maps, right? We have a mirrored diagonal spawn where one opponent is slightly lent towards one corner of the map, whereas on the other side, the opponent is towards the other corner, directly mirrored in that regard. However, sometimes, as we saw in the last series, they can spawn directly in the center between the two ponds. And this is something quite specific to Kawasan and just a few other maps in Age of Empires 4 that we see. Obviously, this split here results in making it pretty clear which pond either player should, at least in theory, prioritize, right? Obviously, both players essentially have their own close pond that they will most likely go on. The other one is going to be a little bit harder to contest for either one due to the longer crossing distance at play here. See a little scout split here, so far favoring Wham a fair bit in terms of sheep, although sheep will not be too significant initially in this matchup until that mid-game. But quite interestingly, already we have... actually, no, there's no deviation. It seems to be exactly the same kind of start as we had in CSO up against Lucifron with the Ayubids, going for that initial dock and just a few fishing ships, whereas the Abbasids instead opt directly for that A-jump.
And now we'll see if that's going to be a military wing as well. But honestly, if it's not military wing, the only other wing that I would go for is the chicken wing. Because honestly, military wing just gives you so much control of this map. Especially, and you can see he's already rallied it here. This man knows. He's like, I'm going to go cook that dock. So I think for once, we might see the military wing not end up in a gold harassment, but rather in a dock one. So... Abbasid definitely is going to have that advantage in getting that pretty early on.
Ouch is the only word that comes to mind in this case, as Wham taking after his brother Puppy Paw from our qualifier number 1 and also somewhat prematurely losing his scout here, giving over a tremendous amount of sheep here. We see a little bit of micro coming out, just trying to split them up as much as possible in sort of a last-ditch attempt of copium to try to save at least some sheep, but the reality is that Scatterbrained is wasting no time in gathering these up and hoovering them back as fast as possible. Now, obviously, this isn't as impactful as in the Papipo Anatan series because this is Kawasan. These are both berry civilizations. But as we get into the mid-game, this could potentially play a part.
Definitely when you start getting camel lances costing 1,000,000 resources a pot. And he gets culture wing advancement. This is going to mean it's going to match the age up. And he's actually going to be able to make a ship to deal with units who try to overextend. But at the same time, he's still going to need to find a way to kill that ram. So this is not getting him out of the danger zone just yet. Even with all of the sheep, no danger zone can be disregarded for this man, especially if you are going up against the strongest of the... Wait, where are my units, boys? Did I...
Popcat.
Popcat, thank you, Myriad. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why we have Myriad on here, to guide the rest of us into reality. Thank you, Myriad. Look at that house. Beautiful.
Nicely rushed up here by Wham. Yeah, that can always happen. This happens with Growth Wing as well from the IO bids, right? You just maybe just forget that house and suddenly you're wondering, where are my villages? Where are my units? I paid money for this. Give me. But they do come out in turn, right? So that's fine. Now, as we mentioned, the sheep is not going to be too impactful, at least initially here for Wham, or well, the lack thereof in terms of sheep, shall we say. But the lack of information, I think, is going to be a much, much bigger sting for Wham in this case. It does have that military wing amass, of course, the two spearmen and the archers, so it's, essentially they can do a little bit of scouting for him, but if Scatterbrained does decide to add any kind of production buildings here to contest these initial units from Wham, that might take him more by surprise than he would like. As we see, a dock attempt here by Wham is going to get nicely denied by Scatterbrained. Courtesy of that advancement wing, he trades off the wood that Lucifron went for in that initial series to get that faster age up, and it does pay fruit. It completely denying any kind of dock attempt on this pond at least. However, Wham is already on that northern pond.
Now, with the gold harassment that I jinxed earlier, guys, that was brought to you by the Whamen cast. She will now concede and say that the gold harassment was, in the end, the answer. Now, doing this is just delaying your opponent from, you know, sitting back, relaxing, getting their upgrades, getting all the ships they want. But Scatterbrained, he's not going for archers like we saw in our previous games. He's going for himself a little bit of a horseplay here, and getting a camel in the mix as well. Now, honestly, I think this is going to be wonderful for him, because what Wham is doing is he's responding blindly. Because like you said, he doesn't know what's going on just yet. He's made a scout as well. So he's going for horsemen because he knows that usually the answer is at least 3 archers. And with 1 horseman, you counter all of that. So now Scatterbrained is going to use that mobility and already get ahead of the problem he's about to face.
Yes, it's quite useful getting that stable up. Not only can you remake the scout, of course, but Horseman can pay a lot of dividends in this kind of a matchup here. Just the early control, the harassment can be useful, as we see. Just a little bit of a premature engagement maybe here by Scatterbrained with his own horseman onto the military wing units. It does seem that he trades out 1 horseman for 1 of the archers, which is not exactly a trade you're happy with in this situation. Maybe a little bit of a greed there by Scatterbrained to try to gain some value, but not, of course, it's not too impactful at this point in time. But these little advantages do add up throughout the course of the game, so Scatterbrained does have to be careful. As you mentioned, Marika, it is going to be a camel follow-up here for him. The first Desert Raider hits the field, second one already out as well. A third one now in queue for him, which will be a great answer up against these horsemen here from Wham, but archer range follow-up would make sense here from Wham, and tower as well on the gold, just to secure it, provide some vision as well as shelter for those villagers. Notably here for Scatterbrained, there's a deviation from the previous series. He did opt for that feudal age advancement wing, so when it does come to those castle ages, he will have a choice, slightly more limited choice in terms of that he will not be able to rush it as Lucifron did, but at least he will gain some value either in the form, or most likely in the form of growth wing for the 7 villagers, the additional food on the berries, or double down on these Desert Raiders and get 3 for free every 2 minutes.
I was actually going to say, I feel like Scatterbrained, even though most people would go for the growth wing, Scatterbrained's the kind of guy who wants to go face, if we recall correctly. This man, he goes face no matter what, so I would not be surprised if we see some extra camels popping out. But definitely growth wing being the more standard choice in this matchup. Considering neither of these players are trying too hard to dock one another, it does seem like we're going to go straight into castle. Let's quickly look at the villager split. We do still have a lot of commitment onto the wood, which signifies that people are keeping their options open or also just getting their production buildings ready. So now the camels are doing some work. The tower is in a good position, but without an upgrade, it doesn't provide the level of protection it needs to. On the other side, though, that tower is not done yet.
Yeah, the tower is not done yet, as it is scouted here by Wham with the horsemen. They're going to put up a little bit of harassment here. At least one villager is definitely going to go down, the one building the tower. It is in turn responded by with a rush up from Scatterbrained here. The tower will go up. One villager is traded out, so a little bit of damage found there by Wham. And meanwhile, once again, similarly, surprisingly even, the Abbasids are the ones who are first on their way to the castle age, most likely in this game here as Wham is very, very close to being able to click that button. Most likely it is going to be culturing once again. The tempo from preservation of knowledge is often too good to pass up in this situation, whereas, you know, with access to the fishing, economic wing loses some value. You're not as likely to go early into those cheaper farms or TCs for that matter on this kind of a map, whereas the value from culturing cannot be understated in this kind of a situation. Desert Raiders are going to park themselves on the north side of the gold. The arrow slits is in on the tower, but it only really covers the southern side, so with plenty enough villagers on gold, some of them will be in range of those Desert Raiders. But yeah, culturing is on the way now for Wham, as Scatterbrained not too far behind with his own age up, and it is double stable already being prepped for him.
Double stable, getting you ready to pump out those camel lances. That is going to make this a very tough game for anyone to handle. Military wing, he chooses, and guys, Scatterbrained, he's the kind of guy who keeps the meta on its toes, and apparently also making some pretty impressive walls alongside that. He says, I do not need 7 villagers, I need more camels.
More camels is going to be the choice here for Scatterbrained, as you predicted, Whamen. Kind of something some players might expect, as we mentioned, taking a little bit from Anatan. Scatterbrained is his fellow Belarusian brother in the sense as Anatan was one of the first notable pioneers when it comes to that Desert Raider focused playstyle for the Iobids. It can definitely be a very oppressive unit in those Castle Age early skirmishes, especially. The ability to switch between melee and ranged cannot be understated in order to help turn the fights in their favor. However, we did mention Abbasid has some very, very good answers up against the Desert Raiders. Not only do they have some of the best archers in the game, courtesy of those composite bows, giving them an additional 30% attack speed, but on top of it, their own camel archers will make swift and excellent work of the Desert Raiders in turn if Wham does decide to opt for them. And this is going to be double stable from him as well, taking him up to 3 stables at this point in time. Most likely going to be camel riders again.
Now, I'm excited to see some camel on camel action, because I think this is also going to come down to micro and knowing when to commit and when to pull out. Now, Wham, he's a little bit more conservative in this case. I think he pulls out a little bit, oh gosh, I'm hearing myself, a little bit more conservatively in the way that he knows when he is about to lose a fight. Scatterbrained, I will chalk this up to a lack of experience in a way, because he is someone who will commit to something even when he's not 100% he's going to win that. You might feel confident, but Wham's experience could be very scary.
Indeed, it could be. I mean, we are talking about a veteran of AoE4 who has played this map very often as well, and is quite familiar with these kind of situations and most likely knows how to respond to these Desert Raiders. But we see 9 Camel Lancers in queue for Scatterbrained, so he's going to be relying on the Desert Raiders coming freely from that House of Wisdom. Every 2 minutes, 3 Desert Raiders. That's a lot of res per minute in terms of math for him. And the Camel Lancers will be a pretty suitable frontline for him in this case. But very similarly to last game, the composition is looking quite similar. We see again Camel Riders and crossbows being prioritized by Wham on the Abbasids with a Lancer support as well. Exactly what CSO opted for very successfully in the previous game. We'll have to see how similarly it goes in this case, but it is in fact Scatterbrained who has the slightly more map control in this case as opposed to how Lucifron did in the previous series, courtesy of the additional units from that reinforcement wing. Mass war here by Wham, kind of what you'd expect from Wham. It is something that he is very much known for by this point in time.
Now we're going to see that double prong attack coming through, and this is where Scatterbrained is a happy camper. The man is going to be attacking from the top with a very damaged horseman and getting the boys ready at the bottom while scooping up these relics, or singular relic for now, but he has been getting the boys out there to protect everything else as well. Wham, though, he's looking for some damage too. We can see both of these players getting their walls up. A very important part of this, but Scatterbrained just boxes in Wham a little bit more. And let's go see if these boys are actually going to find some damage. But for now, they're just trotting along, trying to find the next move. Now, Wham having 4 villages here is already signifying how important he realizes this is. You're not going to let these walls come up calmly. You're going to need to get them up quickly because there are a lot of units on the loose. Now, Horseman here at the back, not ready to dive on in, and probably for the best, because now if you engage here, your opponent knows and he can respond without him being overwhelmed. But if you attack from the front, that ping can very easily be masked, as we've seen even with these high-ranked players up against one another.
Quite interestingly, for Scatterbrained, the food bank is very, very impressive for him. Wham is not far behind. Briefly, I thought he might even be thinking about an Imperial Age behind this, but clearly he's not quite prepared just for the level of food income that he has. Understandably so, because it is a lot, thanks to those berries and the fishing especially. So instead, it is a heavy recommitment into units here from him. And you can see the dividends that the reinforcement wing is paying off here. The army mass is definitely in favor here for Scatterbrained. In terms of raw population count, it is favored. It is neck and neck in terms of military population. However, the value, these expensive cavalry units here for Scatterbrained, are not to be underestimated. Now, Wham, I think, is making very prudent choices here. The camel riders in combination with spears and crossbows. I think this is a composition that should be, in theory, favored up against Scatterbrained's composition. But we'll see whether the value is enough to offset this. So Blacksmith upgrade is now being prioritized by both players. Wham a little bit ahead in that regard. And 3 free camel lancers do get picked up. Scatterbrained slow to notice, and that's just 3 very expensive units going essentially for free over to Wham.
And we can see the army value instantly jumping down significantly, and that just shows the difference in this. Trade wing is clicked up. Bizarre! How bizarre! How bizarre!
Wow.
He is going to be bringing us into the most chaotic Cover-Sun we've seen in a while. And Myriad, I have a question here, and I think Twitch chat also wants to know. What are the optimal amounts of fishing ships that you should go for on this map with 4 deep sea spots?
It depends a little bit on the fishing upgrades, but ideally 3 per deep sea fish on... it depends on the upgrades and the distance, but here I think you're pretty content with 3 per deep sea fish. You could add a few additional in order for the shoreline fish to get even more food, but now you see a little bit of premature engagement here by Scatterbrained. He does have to be very, very careful here because of the fact that he is aging up behind this. Don't want to make a similar mistake as CSO did in the last game. Of course, he did win that game in the end. However, there was a little bit of a messy fight initially there that he might not have wanted to take, and Scatterbrained does back off just in time there. You do have to find this balance of just committing somewhat to trick your opponent into thinking that you're still willing to fight, but at the same time biding time for your age up to come through. Mangonel now on the field of Wham's Abbasid is going to do great work in shutting down some fishing we see already. I mean, the Mangonel does tremendous damage to those fishing ships, so Scatterbrained prudently putting them away just a little bit, and Wham is going to be triple counter docking here, which is definitely a little bit scary here for Scatterbrained because Stone Gathering is underway for Wham, and the arrow slits are going to come in clutch for him in order to completely deny this fishing if Scatterbrained isn't ready. But that Bazaar is 10 seconds out, and depending on the tickets that Scatterbrained gets, Imperial Age Bazaar with enough gold access, which undoubtedly Scatterbrained has for now. We see 1400 gold per minute for him. Those units can be incredibly scary.
Now he does spot the shenanigans that Wham wants to pull, and we see the first thing that he queues up is the Quebec. He wants to shut this down before it even becomes a proper issue. And that is probably the answer he needs here. Now, it does give the fish a little bit of time to regen while the shorelines are being hugged at the moment, but he wants to get those upgrades. We see the camels getting their upgrades too, alongside the other camels, lancers, and what are they called again? Raiders. Lancers and raiders. I was about to call them riders. So these guys definitely going to make it a little bit harder for Wham to respond, because Wham has now clicked up Eco Wing. And if you're Wham, you don't want to fight this right now. You want to fight this in 3 minutes, when your upgrades have kicked in, when you've had enough resources to do so, and when you've taken a very strong control of the middle of the map. And that's exactly what he's doing. Now, Scatterbrained, he has something else in mind. He's got elite camels everywhere, and we'll see now what these beautiful Bedouin swordsmen are going to contribute to this mass heading towards Wham.
This is actually a really, really scary army mass coming in here from Scatterbrained. He has elite Desert Raiders. He has elite Camel Lancers. Quadruple Manjanique behind this for him, as well as 8 skirmishes and Bedouin swordsmen as well, courtesy of that bazaar. Even infantry support, camel support, excuse me, coming in for his Iubids behind this as well, giving additional armor to his units in this situation. And the keep drop as well, this is a nice little timing found here by Scatterbrained to reassert map control away from Wham. In this case, the Shemek also denied the docks on his own pond, so fishing is reinstated once again. So food income once again will recover here for him. It has been slacking a little bit after it has been denied initially, and Scatterbrained kind of has to keep going here, I think, because if Wham does get his own upgrades, his army should, in theory, be favored somewhat in this situation, thanks to infantry being typically just stronger in a direct engagement than cavalry units like this. But I mean, with these bazaar units, they are also very, very effective as infantry units, and this could be really scary here for Wham.
Now, these mangonels may have lost their heads, but they are still going to be able to do some damage. He needs to be careful. The camels, though, they are quite spicy, and the age up just came through, so the upgrades are going to take a while. We see the camels getting on top now, and it does look like they're going to pull out, ensuring they don't get impaled by all those spears. Beautiful focus fire here from Scatterbrained. We can see he's trying to do his best. He's trying to start a step, gets down a lot of units, but let's see if he overcommits here.
Very beautiful snipe there by Scatterbrained, wasting no time and finding a perfect timing to instantly take out the 2 mangonels that Wham has access to. And that's actually a pretty critical loss here for Wham, losing those 2 mangonels, because quadruple Manjanique, like we mentioned, up here for Scatterbrained. This is a really scary army here for Wham now. We see, once again, there's more bazaar units available for Scatterbrained, but he's not opting to hire them yet. Instead, fully focused on the fight. Mangonel shots do come in from the Manjaniques. Decent damage done, but also decent dodges by Wham in turn. Quite a messy fight here. Not exactly the kind of position you want to be fighting as camels here. We see army numbers dropping rapidly for both players here. Keep goes up for Wham, which will ensure the defense here. As Scatterbrained does seem like is forced away. The timing did not work.
Scatterbrained just engaging under the keep, under the TC, sacrificing so many of those camels. We see all that elite armor lying on the floor. And all of a sudden, Wham probably feels pretty happy. And that's just showing us what a little bit of overcommitment can look like. Now, though, he gets himself a nice little Quebec over here, ensuring that he has that ability. These guys now having their university upgrades too. We see biology coming out too. That is going to make this a lot harder. And skirmishers doing their best at sniping down some units. You can see him specifically target firing these because he knows they're gonna die. Might as well get all the value out of them.
Now we see biology being queued up for Scatterbrained. He does still have a huge mass of Desert Raiders available, but Ideally, he would have loved to have that biology in that fight, not having it hurt so much. I mean, we saw just how rapidly those camels fell in the middle of Wham's base there, and the destroyed value tells no lies. There was definitely a really favorable fight there for Wham, and now the army count is firmly in his favor. Value still in favor of Scatterbrained, courtesy of the expensive Desert Raider, the Desert Raiders, as well as the quadruple Shebek he now has on the seas, which he will look to contest this northern pond with that was under Wham's control, but is now slipping a little bit, although Wham, making his own Shebeks, is most likely going to be able to stabilize here. But these armies, I mean, is definitely favoring Wham with these armies. He just needs to find the timing to move out. There is a keep in the center, however, so Scatterbrained does have access to a lot of food here, a lot of berries here up for grabs, which will definitely tide over his food further along. And the question is, how fast can Wham break this and move through? One Calvary is out on the way already. There's going to be a torch attempt on these docks. They're going down pretty damn rapidly. And yeah, Scatterbrained is not going to be able to keep contesting this. There's just too many units here from Wham.
And the problem is, I don't think Scatterbrained has an answer to most of these units in the middle now. He doesn't have the army to handle this mass. He's got camels. And more camels and more camels, but he's not getting anything else to handle the units that are clearly cleaning him up so quickly. Now, we'll see why Anatand and him both believe in this playstyle, in this fight, because this could be the pivotal one that changes the game one way or the other. I'm just going to keep the eye on the House of Wisdom so we can see what is in the market. But at this point of the game, I think you probably don't want to be spending that much gold on a unit that isn't camel-like from the eyes of Scatterbrained.
Yes, that's the limiting factor for the bazaar, just the huge gold cost associated with those units. It can give a huge amount of value if you have essentially endless gold set up in the form of course, trade, which might have been an option for Scatterbrained thanks to that wall. It did make me think whether that is his plan, although, you know, it's not really something that can be held for free on this kind of a map. I mean, it is at the end of the day Wham's side of the map there. The Culverins starting to work down that keep ever so slowly. The Culverins do have great range, but they have notable less damage than the Bombard or the Royal Cannon, which is their counterparts. And this mass camel strategy from Scatterbrained, I think, can work quite well against some civs in the game. Of course, ranged mounted units are extremely effective in the ultra late game, specifically because they are boosted by not one, not two, but 3 university upgrades. Biology, as well as incendiary arrows and silk bowstrings for the additional range, means that they can pack a huge punch when it comes to these drawn out fights and gain huge value over time. But out of all civs in the game, Abbasid, with their archers, really can deal with them quite effectively, and even Wham could opt to go into those camel archers to swing the tide even further in his favor if he so chooses.
Yeah, the problem is, I don't know if Scatterbrained is going to be able to find any damage anywhere right now. It feels like his one-dimensional comp is putting him in a position where he's not really gaining ground. So we can see here he's floating a lot of food and a little bit of gold. He is also running low on said gold. So now with Wham trying to take control of that completely, this is going to get harder and harder. He's got this keep on the middle and he should be able to use it. But now finally getting the cannon emplacement should help him keep this position down. But at the same time, Wham is putting pressure from the bottom. Oh, from the west. There we go. From the west, he is going to do some pushing and he will actually have the opportunity to find some damage. Well, I feel like Wham, he's pretty much got his late game base more secure.
That he does, right? I mean, the only limiting factor for Wham was his gold axis, which is now secured with that key. But Clash does come in at the center here. The coverings are starting, more and more coverings are on the way for Wham to start to take down that keep. And Scatterbrained knows that it's a pressure that he has to respond to in turn. His Incendiary Arrows is in for Wham as well. And you can see those archers firing rapidly and dealing a huge amount of damage to those Desert Raiders, combined with the Camel Rider frontline, with having a huge amount of armor those Camel Riders do. So they'll be able to tank effectively up against the Camel Riders, but Scatterbrained also doing a great job focus firing there onto the Culverin, which does now go down, but he has to be careful because in the long term, these trades really don't favor him. Meanwhile, Raid coming in, just like you predicted, Whamen, coming in from the north side as Wham secured the gold right into Scatterbrained's base. This is definitely going to be a pretty annoying disruption at this point in time, at the worst of time as well. Beautifully timed by Wham, because now Scatterbrained is forced to split his forces and he can no longer effectively defend this keep.
Yeah, the problem is there's a lot of things happening at the back of the base right now. And at the front side, we need to find an answer for that culverin. The problem is the answer is not that simple. We do see the culverins hammering down, villagers desperately trying to prepare, but there's going to be stone missing pretty soon in now.
Yeah, the lack of stone is kind of a nail in the coffin when it comes to this center keep here for Scatterbrained. It will undoubtedly fall to the double culverin fire. And we see Wham, he understands what's going on. More archers, up to 50 now. More spearmen, more camel riders. Essentially the best composition you can have up against these desert raiders. He could even make some camel archers if he wants, but I mean, he just trades so cost effectively with these composite bow archers that he just doesn't even need the camel archers for the stronger direct composition here. As you can see, just the damage. I mean, the desert raiders are doing a great job in trading out against these archers, at least in the smaller numbers, but overall the value is just so much more in Wham's favor here when it comes to these extended trades. The Desert Raiders are stronger one against one, naturally, as you'd expect, thanks to the resource cost and the university upgrades. But the more these units trade, the more value is gained by Wham in this situation. I just don't think that Abbasid is the sieve where mass Desert Raiders will work out.
The problem is we're running out of gold on the map, right? Yes, we still have some small golds laying around, but it doesn't... But it doesn't feel like this is that point where you're like, okay, I can confidently go out on the map and mine what I need to. There's a keep that just spotted you there, sir. And you are about to get counter-raided in no time. But both of these players spending every bit of resource they have. We can see Wham's numbers were dwindling there for a bit. Because even though he did get a very successful fight off, it felt like those free camels kind of played their part, right? So these archers, they're great, but now the question is just, is he going to be able to hold this down? The Quebec here is also there to support, and it's going to go down pretty quickly, but the villagers do seem like they're going to make it out alive. And for some reason, recently, people just stopped going for boiling oil. Myriad, is it just too expensive, or why are we not seeing any more boiling oil coming out of people?
It is a little bit expensive, and on top of it, yes, the nerfs definitely reduce the amount of damage it does, so a lot of value lost. And it's also that quite rarely do people actually directly try to torch keeps, so, you know, the value it would give when, you know, a fully surrounded keep is being torched, that is when it really can pay for itself in terms of damage dealt. But it's such a rare situation that it makes it just not worth it in most cases. Scatterbrained finds a little bit of respite here by denying Wham's gold gathering, and he's using his mobility very well. One advantage that Scatterbrained has with this composition, although it's weaker in a direct fight than Wham's, the mobility definitely is great for him. And as you mentioned yourself, Whamen, the free Desert Raiders, every 2 minutes, 3 free Desert Raiders coming in here for Scatterbrained is really doing work for him. If he's able to keep getting himself in these advantageous positions with the raiding, with the mobility, he's going to be in a pretty good spot the longer the game goes. However, the issue, like you mentioned, is gold is limiting. It is slowly running out. Quite notably, Wham didn't opt to challenge what is meant to be his large gold mine, which is on his side of the map and has been secured very early on by a wall towards that southern lake there for Scatterbrained. That wall went up and it was essentially never challenged by Wham, but that is going to go change as I say that Wham is moving the entirety of his army mass pretty much towards this goal to try to contest it. But as soon as he realizes there's only 700 gold left, he realizes, it's not even worth killing the villagers.
Exactly, because if you invest this many resources that you cannot replace anytime soon, this starts to get hard. You can see that singular relic he had has now successfully been yoinked. And getting a good yoink off at this point of the game is pretty dire. It's a very healthy way to get yourself ahead, especially now that you are able to secure more gold with your keeps. So now the food is also going to get shut down from Wham, and honestly, I thought Wham was okay for a while here, but all of a sudden, it looks like Scatterbrain's value just paid off.
It has somewhat indeed. I mean, he's losing the center mass here. One notable thing that I think we so rarely see it just because of how difficult it is to get to it. It is that Golden Age 5 for the Iovids, which gives an additional 20% attack speed to his camel riders, desert raiders, excuse me. That could maybe be enough to turn the tide in these fights, but Scatterbrained, it's just something he's forgetting about, which, I mean, is understandable. It's so hard to think of these optimizations mid-game when there's so much pressure, there's so many things to focus on. As the saying goes, we're all far better players when watching than playing, as is often the case. Wham now looking to rush up a keep to re-secure mid-map control here, but there's so many Desert Raiders here, way more than archers, and those are not the kind of odds you want to have as the archer players. We can see Scatterbrained actually doing a great job in cleaning up this mass, but still, he's still trading unfavorably here. The camels are dropping faster than the archers are. The Coverings helping out in that situation, but I'm not exactly sure who's going to look to be favored in this position here. Wood is a real problem here for Wham, and he can no longer really afford to keep massing archers like this.
And the problem is he's sacrificing more villagers, and this is fine if you have 120 of them, but 35 minutes into the game, that is a very heavy price to pay. Now, it does take a little focus from the camels off of the military, but it doesn't look like he's going to be successful in getting the keep up either. And Wham calls it, honestly, Scatterbrained, he's cooking.
A cook indeed. I want to say I wasn't quite a believer in the mass camels up against composite bow archers here against Wham from Scatterbrain, especially because of the lack of Golden Age 5 on the Iobids. But he makes it work. Somehow he makes it work. The villagers lost there by Wham just too much. The wood economy really suffered. It does make me wonder whether just adding camel archers would have been the necessity here for Wham in this case, because I guess when it comes to pop efficiency in these late game fights, apparently it's king.
And it looked pretty disgusting just seeing that many camels, because at that point, how do you contest this? How do you kill all those units when they start to get to that mass? And we saw it working under a keep and under a TC, but in the open, they did pretty well.
That they did, and Scatterbrained picks up a much-needed win here in this game number 2. Very well played. I think, not to discredit Scatterbrained, but most people wouldn't have been too surprised by potentially a 3-0 up in this up in this set, simply just because of Wham's extensive experience in Scatterbrained being somewhat new to these, notably higher placements in these tournaments as an up-and-comer, but tying the series up once again, evening the ground and securing himself a pretty good foot up into game number 3. And it is going to be House of Lancaster for Wham against Scatterbrained's Japanese on Kerlauga.
Now, these two civilizations, we've been seeing shenanigans being pulled from both sides. I feel like with your Lancaster, people have made it very clear that they are no longer a 9-manner, let's just explode economically into your face kind of civilization. They have diversity. And if I think about Japanese, same thing. We've seen a lot of shenanigans from Japan. And that's why I don't know if I've seen this matchup on this map yet that I recall. So I don't really know how this will play out. But honestly, I'm excited to learn and I'm excited to see what both of these players will pull out, knowing how the other one plays. Scatterbrained, a little bit less predictable in his playstyle because, again, there's less games to study. He hasn't been around for that long. But Wham, we see him often. And we see him cranking out units and destroying everything in his path. So I feel like Scatterbrained has a lot more that he can study around Wham. And I want to see what he can pull out. So, Myriad, on a map like this, on Kerlauga, what do you think we're going to be seeing in terms of early game aggression between Wam, or House of Lancaster, and Japan. Let's just look at those two first. Not the players, but the civs.
It is tough to go, because just like yourself, Whamen, I don't think I've ever seen this matchup on this map in particular. I mean, Lancaster obviously being a new civ, and Kalaga making a comeback in this tournament once again after not being seen for a little while in professional play. There's very interesting dynamics here at play, right? I mean, Dark Age shenanigans are very much a possibility. The Japanese has really favored that recently, and Lancaster, with their superior sheep gathering rate, are also pretty adept at it by now. And there's plenty to fight over as well, right? I mean, good amount of shoreline fish on these two rivers here. Could be a very, very action-packed early game here in this matchup. But as to what comes afterwards, it's anyone's guess.
So I am a little concerned about the chaos that will ensue, or either just the calmness. But I feel like with Japan, Scatterbrained can do anything. I'm really excited to see it. And guys, they are both ready. So I hope you boys are too. We will be heading over. So let's press that button.
Here we go as we jump into game number 3 between Wham and Scatterbrained. We are on Kalauga from the Masters of Steel qualifier number 2. Wham showcasing the House of Lancaster in the color blue here against his opponent. 3D Scatterbrained in the color yellow, playing as the Japanese. Japanese historically one of the more favored civilizations on Kalauga, and a lot of water and hybrid maps especially. It is where they have initially made their mark as what in the past was considered one of the, probably the best civilization for this kind of maps of water contention. They have been shaved a little bit in their power since then, notably with the Shinobi. The Koka Township no longer giving an instant free Shinobi. Now it needs to be produced similarly to the English King. Their fishing ships have also gained a bit additional cost in turn. So a little bit of power has been taken away from them, but they are still one of the most favored picks here. Meanwhile, Lancaster has been making a bit of a name for themselves, not only on land maps because of the incredibly reliable and potent mana economy, but also on these hybrid maps. They have been looking very, very effective, and even some water maps as well, potentially. Courtesy of the faster sheep gathering rate enables an early pump of spears that can be a little bit scary for a lot of civs to deal with, as Wham is going to look to showcase now. Scatterbrained, either not scouting this or not caring about it, just goes for a dock straight away and does not opt for his own spears as of yet.
So we saw his scout actually running by the TC and spotting it a little bit late. So with this, he just wasn't prepared, and I think Wham now with 4 spears, he's just going to be able to be everywhere. Now Scatterbrained, he realizes, I just need to get my gold. Now some of these villages will need to be careful, and we do see the first one getting pulled back, but it looks like he's going to commit to this and ensure the villagers get what they need. The problem is just, you don't have enough just yet, but he realizes that and puts them back to work. The thing is, there is 1 spearman and 1 scout burning this, and that is probably going to be enough.
Quick pinch coming in by Wham, and the charge at the last second does manage to pick up the villager on the gold. So Scatterbrained still not getting the gold necessary to age up, still needs 3, which he should be able to gather pretty easily here if you just send like 3 of the full HP villagers. That won't be a problem, but losing a villager so early hurts a lot for him here, and on top of it, he's most likely going to lose that northern dock as well.
This has been a massive investment for him because this has not produced any fish and ships. So he basically is losing 150 wood, and that's a pretty big investment. Even though, yes, you can argue that Wham has invested a significant amount in getting these units. The thing is, he has map control now, and he's most likely going to age up even faster than Scatterbrained, who just was on gold for so long already and has no military units to follow up with. So Now the question is just, are the shinobis going to be able to perform miracles? We see the Lancaster Castle being placed quite aggressively. It does cover a wood line, so if you do get a few manners, it does make it a little bit safer. But of course, you don't want to put them this far forward. Now, he's in the spot to do so, though. And we do not see any shinobis coming out tonight. And I feel like this reminds me of Gorge, if I just look at this map in this position. This looks like a nice little gorge storehouse that will have a nice set of farms around it, protected by a woodline.
I think this is a smart choice here by Scatterbrained going for the Kura storehouse. The Shinobi, I think going Shinobi against Lancaster, it's a bit similar to going Shinobi up against the English. It's just, you know, you're giving up quite a lot in terms of food to go for them, and to what end, really? Not only will the villagers themselves deal somewhat effectively with the Shinobi, as long as they are spotted in time, thanks to the short bows, but as we mentioned, with the Lancaster Castle, there's going to be manners in play, and they will be shooting arrows. And like you mentioned, Wham has a pretty nice spot for it. His gold is covered by them, as well as that northern woodline will be covered by the manners from that northern angle as Wham starts to build them up. So Scatterbrained instead prioritizing that safe food scaling, which I think is definitely a prudent choice here. Shinobi not going to find much value in this instance. However, you know, the torching of the dock definitely hurts here for him. At least he didn't invest in any fishing ships initially, so that's pretty decent for him in that regard. But just like the spears killing the villager, the dock even further also slowed down his age-up timing to a certain extent here. And it is going to be Yumi follow-up here for Scatterbrained to push away these spears, which obviously is a good choice in this situation. But what level of investment are we going to see here from Scatterbrained? Is this a situation of just pushing away these spears, gaining a little bit of breathing room, then trying to go Castle Age ASAP? Or is he going to play way more aggressive than we would expect a Japanese feudal to be?
Now, the aggressiveness that we need from Japan in the early game is very apparent because you're playing against Lancaster. If you just let Lancaster sit back, relax, they are going to destroy you. And I'm sure Scatterbrained knows this. So he sends out those Yumis instantly. Instead of sending them towards the spearmen or where he thinks they are, he goes forward. And he's trying to look for damage because he knows this is a ticking time bomb. If you just let them sit back, build manners, and not invest into any other units, they are going to destroy anything in their wake. And with these Yumis, you probably want to do some damage pretty early on before you actually get outmassed.
Yes, an argument can be made that with fishing backup, as long as Lancaster does not have fishing, maybe Japanese can ignore the manners at least initially and opt for that castle age timing. But of course, that is not the case here, Whamen. It is a dock attempt now, once again, on this southern river here from Scatterbrained. However, Wham is ahead in terms of economic tempo here. Already one manor is up. Second two are on the way and going to finish up any second at this point in time. Second finishing third on the way as well. Already the upgrade for the manners is going to come in here for Wham, so at least 6 is the plan for him here. We do have Yumi parking here on the stone for Scatterbrained, so he's going to look to put a little bit of harassment there. Wham, oh no, he does spot it just in time. He's not going to lose the villager. However, Scatterbrained, his own villager is in danger, but the Yumi are there to meet, and they're going to kill the spear just in time. So, Scatterbrained is going to push Wham off of the stone here initially. Might be enough to force some either yeomen or hobblers out from Wham to re-secure that stone. And he gets a little bit of value from the Yumi at least.
And with these Yumis, he's also stopped producing them. So now we have to ask ourselves, with 14 on wood, what is he planning? But luckily for him, he's playing pseudo-English. And this means spicy villagers. And spicy villagers, they have talked, they have shown their teeth, and they have destroyed what they need to. Now the villager here going to be all alone mining until the rest of them get redirected. Now this looks to be one of those 6 mana builds into destruction. So the 6 mana build, as from what I've seen, it's been performing really well because it's a little bit greedy but not too much, and it gets your eco going and you get to make units between all of it because it is just less of an investment economically, especially when you've got your opponent on the back foot. What's really interesting to me is that the farms aren't being utilized at all. Is it just because of the gathering speed? Him not seeing it as worth it right now because he's trying to pump out as many units as possible.
Yes, exactly. It does seem to be the case that Scatterbrained, using his map control to his advantage, at least for now, he knows that the sheep are going to be faster. The berries are going to be way faster as this Tawara now looks to come in. And he's not too worried about running out of food just yet. And I mean, he'd rather take the unsafe berries first, as it seems, because without the daimyo upgrade, the farms are pretty slow, right? So it seems like he wants to maximize his food income. And quite smartly, he's going to put the low HP villages onto those initial 2 safe farms. Nicely optimized there by him. We do have the Demi Lancers coming in for Wham, courtesy of those manners now coming in. They're going to idle out the gold here. Double outpost is up for Scatterbrained, so definitely playing safe here. Not greeding, prudent choice without a doubt. Scatterbrained is going to go straight for the castlage as a result of this, after getting up those 2 docks, but is it enough? I mean, the idle time here is going to mean that Wham, with 6 manners and the map control, is going to be on his way to the castlage first.
And getting a white tower in the middle of the map is probably the cheekiest move a man can make. This is going to mean that those upgrades are going to be full price anyway, but the white tower gives you so much control in this scenario. Now, you don't want to be losing any of these demi-lancers, and they are taking a lot of damage here. The fishing ship's coming in clutch and repairing that ship. He does lose one of them, but they will make it out alive, and when castle hits, they will be upgraded. So those can be quite spicy. Floating gate being put down now, going to be floating into the castle age, and from there on out, we'll be seeing some samurai action, most likely. Or are we just seeing Onamushas? Because that's usually the other option, Myriad. Do they go for samurais or Onamushas? Why, what, when, and who? How does one decide what the playstyle is?
Well, there needs to be a little bit of adaptation, right? We have to see what Wham commits to here in terms of what Scatterbrained commits to. Notably, with the White Tower being the landmark of choice here for Wham, of course, he's going to get the three instantaneous Guard from the White Tower in order to start putting on even more pressure on Scatterbrained here. But notably, these Demolancers, although they get free upgrades, there is no King's College, so the notable upgrade from there, at least initially, that collar of S's giving any armored cavalry, namely Demolancers and Knights, they would get +6 damage against armored units from the collar of S's upgrade. That will not be a possibility here for Wham, so the Samurai gain a lot more value in this situation than they would otherwise, because, I mean, I'm not exactly sure which one of them wins directly. However, it would make sense that in an extended fight, the regular knights from Wham and his Demi-Lancer should win out if the deflective armor, does not get utilized to its fullest extent. But it's going to be crossbow follow-up here from Wham, as well as additional spears. He knows what's coming for him, and he's preparing accordingly.
Now, with these guys, they're actually able to burn down a few houses, which might not seem like a big thing, but it's gonna starve for wood. Scatterbrained does not have any wood lying around, so these boys need to quickly get back to work. Otherwise, they are gonna be very alone as the the 3 mounted samurais running around. Now, with these numbers, you do need to respond, and Wham is doing that. He's responding by getting spearmen. Now, he's also responding by doing the most disgusting thing that I have seen on ladder and in tournament today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Fast Imperial House of Lancaster.
Yep. You look away for just a moment and already Wham is firmly on his way to Imperial, and this is starting to be quite the trend for House of Lancaster in these situations, especially when opting for that White Tower. It really is a bit reminiscent of the classic 2TC White Tower Fast Imp from English, but let's be honest, superior in virtually every way here for House of Lancaster. And I mean, what can you really do as Scatterbrained in this instance? You have a White Tower in the center of the map, blocking out the only large gold vein and the main access point towards Wham's base. You're forced to go all the way around the river and the White Tower to try to raid. And by the time you get there, I mean, Wham's already on his way to Imp.
And now Wham is looking to do some pressure with those horses on his side too. And that's exactly what we see with this type of playstyle. These horses are forcing Scatterbrained to make units and not be able to contest a fast Imperial themselves. We can see those horses just idling, and at the same time Scatterbrained is trying to find damage himself, but because of the very protective buildings we've got over here, it is much harder to find that type of damage.
Exactly right, and I mean, this is so unfortunate here for Scatterbrained. I mean, is the Wingard Palace coming through? And yeah, there we see it. Garrison command, straight away. 8 spearmen and 1 O's guard at such a discounted price, 0 gold cost. He can just keep making this repeatedly. And what are these mounted samurai going to do? You could do a Yumi switch here for Scatterbrained, but I mean, how long is that going to work? Because if you do, then Wham is just simply going to go for the cavalry army from the Wingard Palace instead, for those Hobblars and for those Demulancers as well. Wham can answer essentially anything Scatterbrained does in this instance, and his economy is just better.
Yeah, those manners are doing the talking, and we see he's going to need to get Scuttage soon, but we see it's already in queue. This is going to mean that these guys produce gold as well. And this just becomes so difficult because Wham, like you said, these things are produced without paying any gold. He doesn't even need the Spearman upgrade. When you have those numbers, you can just keep popping them out, and Castle Age Spearman will do just as well, especially when your opponent is stuck in castle himself. So with him pulling off a lot of the villages from gold, he is not in a rush. Now getting the Spearman upgrade anyway, and with that, he will most likely be able to break Scatterbrained in half.
Exactly. I mean, already, like, I looked away for a minute, Marika, and there's already 25 spearmen on the field without a single barracks being made. I mean, there is a barracks now as the upgrade is coming in, but it's not like he's going to produce from that barracks. It's only for the upgrades, and still these early demi-lancers, even now getting value, even now distracting Scatterbrained. Meanwhile, Wham's army just keeps growing more and more spearmen, more Osgard at immense value for money here for him. Soon enough, he's going to have a military academy in as well to train even faster, and he can just keep going endlessly. And these spearmen, with the elite upgrade, and once you have Undermesh level 2 and especially Undermesh level 3 in as well, he can just dive TCs effortlessly and just not care.
And that's literally the only upgrade he's going for, is ranged armor. So he just knows that's exactly what I will be doing. Myriad, I think he's watched enough, or he's been the guy who's made enough pro games for the rest of us, traumatized the whole generation into dealing with the House of Lancaster pushing. And we can see now that one singular relic bringing income to Scatterbrained. He's been pushed off of the gold here. And at the same time, this one is running a little bit low. So he's trying to get these to take them down. But with the upgrades, this is going to be a little bit hard. And even if this group does get shut down, there are a few more groups waiting for them.
Yeah, exactly. And Scatterbrained is reinvesting into Yumi here, right? As you prudently do. You need just a huge amount of Yumi to deal with this massive spearman. But the spearman can just keep running from left to right, from the center, left to right again, and center again. Just coming in, one batch going in left, one batch going in right. They will just keep idling you out. And they can just keep just suiciding themselves in order to gain value here repeatedly. Under towers, under TCs. It's disgusting, to be honest. just watching this happen. He's just gonna keep doing this. He's not even bothering to add the extra mana. Actually, he is now slowly. He can just keep pumping. I mean, I don't want to call it OP, but the thing is, on maps like this specifically, where you can just secure the map so effectively with White Tower, it's such a potent pick.
And it doesn't look like any units that Scatterbrained can make is going to deal with this, because with that composition that you get one Ilsgard. And Yumi, they're great against Spearmen, but when there's one Ilsgard in the mix, he's going to be able to absorb every bit of damage you try to do to them. Now, Yumi again at the back line here, trying to clean up what they can. And yes, they'll keep picking off these Spearmen, But we'll just keep seeing more spearmen from more sides. The other dock now next on the menu. And you can see Scatterbrained realizes, hey, I'm gonna lose all my houses. I might as well build them in the middle of nowhere. But actually, Wham, he smells houses. It's actually a built-in Canadian ability that he has, where they just look for safe haven and they can just torch it down right there. Apparently, that's the Canadian bonus in AoE.
You can't help but feel sorry for Scatterbrained in this game. I mean, he thought, he even cancels the blueprints. He knows, okay, well, that spot is forfeit. There's no more houses to be put there. And even just torching these houses, just so much damage being done, just adding up bit by bit by bit by bit. Destroyed value already favoring Wham here, which is normally a rare thing for the player that is the aggressor and continuously diving. Normally, fighting against the defender will mean that you trade somewhat unfavorably in order to get damage done. But Wham is not only trading favorably, but he's also getting damage done at the same time. So it's a double whammy situation here for Scatterbrain, who is just churning out Yuumi. But at the end of the day, they castlage Yuumi against these spearmen. So if you actually just stand still with the Yuumi, they will just lose out against the spearmen. So you have to keep kiting with them. So the burden of micro is also so much heavier on Scatterbrained in this instance as well. These knights would love to get some value, but now we see, Wham, seeing the number of Yuumi, he just starts to go for the cavalry army instead, which I forget the name of. Maybe we can check to have a look in a bit.
Yeah, these ones. Garrison,
yeah.
Oh no, wait.
That's for we'll have a look. But it's Hobblars and Demi-Lancers, Earl's Retinue. 6 Demi-Lancers and 2 Hobblars. Obviously, they will do great work up against the Yuumi here. And you can see Scatterbrain just trying his best to answer to every side of his base, putting out fires left and right and center. But it's just too much, because the reality is, this will not stop.
This is never going to slow down, and Scatterbrained is very much slowed down. As we can see, the resources per minute already decreasing. We have an eye on the other army as well, but there's 3 armies. He's not just getting double whammied, he's getting triple whammed, and this is just too much for him to handle. 47 Yuumis. They are barely doing a bit of damage to these elite Demi-Lancers, and this Daimo Palace trying to shoot extra hard, but it's just not enough. Scatterbrain's eco is basically idle, as we see 160 gold per minute as well. Next up, more villagers.
I have to quickly take off my glasses just to wipe them and make sure I'm seeing things right in terms of income per minute, because it is looking absolutely horrendous. I mean, just in food alone, almost Wham has more than every resource per minute that Scatterbrained has. It cannot get more dire than this for Scatterbrained, and he's doing as good of a job as he possibly can realistically in this situation to defend. But what are his options?
His option is going into the next game. He says, I've had enough. Scattered ashes around the floor. The man decides to tap out. Honestly, we get it, Scatterbrained. You did not give up too early. You played your heart out, and then you got Imperial Aged, and that was enough. That was enough. We didn't need to see more. He didn't need to be traumatized more.
Yeah, it feels kind of a similar situation to the first game almost, where it almost feels very difficult already in the first 5 minutes nearly. I mean, it was an unfortunate start here for Scatterbrained, just missing the barracks, although it could be something that he maybe expected. But then it's also something that you might not expect, because I do think that Japan should probably win out in the Dark Age. Of course, they have decent economy as well for those spearmen. They could potentially get the samurai which are great on the defensive, especially if they want to defend the dock, because obviously then their mobility isn't as big of a disadvantage. They can then get the first melee upgrade as well, with just a little bit of gold gathering. So Scatterbrained, he probably thought, well, I should win in Dark Age, so surely Wham is not going to try to fight in the Dark Age. But that can sum up AoE 4 in a lot of ways. It's this kind of situation which I for sure am very familiar with myself, where if something is ineffective and you don't expect it, then it can suddenly become very effective if you don't expect it and the enemy does it, right? And honestly, that can be an incredibly tilting situation to be in, and I'm sure the Scatterbrained is feeling that somewhat right now. But the series is not over.
Yeah, when we have it on 4 legs though, and a matchup like Order of the Dents against Mongols, are we seeing a Scatterbrained? I want to say Dark Age shenanigans, of course, but just because of the civilization, I would love to see a fast imp. I know it's not possible because of Order of the Dragon. It would just be so poetic if Scatterbrained would do to Wham what was done to. Just
I
doesn't have the
know
same effect.
that's exactly what I was thinking as well. It's we have seen last week especially Wham and Pop People, of course, utilizing Mongols here on Four Lakes, especially with brutal efficiency when it comes to that fast imperial. The safe food income from the home side docks on the ponds can provide such great value, and the result of which is that you just have the food which you would normally need to unlock with pro scouts to get to just go imperial and hold at the same time. And I mean, Mongols, when piloted by the Canadian brothers, I haven't seen anyone else do it, though I'm sure it might have been played somewhere else in the qualifiers. It hasn't lost the map for them here on Four Lakes at least. So Scatterbrained, as you mentioned, is going to flip the tables in that regard and look to use it against them in this case. Order of the Dragon, though, I think can have a pretty powerful Castle Age sort of pseudo all-in play with that Burgrave if they do choose to go for it, which, with a short crossing distance on a map like Four Lakes, the lack of mobility from the Burgrave units might not really be as much of a problem here, so Scatterbrain does have to be careful.
Yesterday, Scatterbrained was in a make game with the Burgrave, and we honestly lost it as a community in that stream. I feel like the Burgrave just showed us a true power of it. But Myriad, I won't spoil it for you. You need to watch that game, and you need to cry on the inside as we did, because Scatterbrained has experience with this. And I think he's aware of the limits and the abilities of this civilization. So I just want to focus on if there's a game 5. If we get to game 5, Scatterbrain still has Zushi in his pocket, but Wham still has China. So I feel like both of these players are pretty solid going into the final map if they do get there. Because match point, of course. But on Dry Arabia, is that still going to be your picks? China versus Zushi?
It's tough to say. It's tough to say because there's other options as well. I know Scatterbrain quite enjoys his Ottomans. He picked it himself against me, for example, in KPMM recently, even though he had what would typically be considered. I think he actually also had Jushi in that situation, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be misremembering. Obviously, Delhi is still a really great pick on Dry Arabian. Wham as well has French available still for him, as well as Malians, both really strong picks. It might be a bit of a mind game situation where they might try to think, okay, well, he's going to pick Jushi. Maybe Malians can do better there, which it potentially can. Where Scatterbrain thinking, well, he's going to do China. Maybe I can take advantage of an Ottoman timing here because of that. But yeah, in hindsight, I don't think we'll see Delhi because China is it's a destruction against Delhi, to be honest, frankly. And yeah, I mean, Ottomans can do quite well against something like Malians as well, potentially. There's a few options there, I think. There's a few options there. And Jushi against China, even today, it's still a little bit debated who's favored, really. It used to be Jushi, but more and more it's also looking really good for China nowadays. I do feel like Jushi should still somewhat be favored thanks to the map control awarded by the Dali horses, Lancers, notably. But the problem is that it's a scaling situation, right? China just outscales Jushi. Frankly, they just have a better economy the longer the game goes, and just a better army the longer the game goes. So that pressure for Jushi to do damage can often lead to situations where you overextend and maybe lose your army. Which, if you do, it's over.
Oh, so I feel like basically what we have here is Dry Arabia with too many options, and counterpicking will be counterpicked. So I'm actually liking that. Lots of mind games. But guys, Are you ready for the final, maybe final game, match point game of the series? Let's hop on in.
Match point indeed is where Wham finds himself here, Scatterbrained backed up against the wall here, needing desperately another win here in this series to stay further along in this tournament. At least I think so. Maybe you can correct me quickly, Marika, when you can, whether we are in the double elimination bracket or not.
Not yet.
But not yet. So Scatterbrained feeling the pressure here, a little bit of sweat on the back of his neck, most likely here, needing to make this Mongol pick work. And it is definitely a very strong pick here, without a doubt, finding great success, especially by his opponent in the previous qualifier. So we'll have to see whether he can also mirror that success as we load into game number 4 of Masters of Steel qualifier number 2. Scatterbrained in the color blue as the Mongols. Oh, actually, no, excuse me. It's actually in the color yellow. Yes, there we go. Wham is the one who's in blue normally. Yeah.
Yeah. On the
in the color yellow. Exactly. Once again, testing the viewers' attention spans. It was completely intentional, guys. Don't worry about it. Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. The Mongols in the color yellow, piloted by Scatterbrained here in our game number 3. Up against Wham in the color blue as the Odor of the Dragon.
Now this time, I would say Scatterbrained got more sheep, and as I was about to say that, the sheep just basically spawned in front of Wham, and Wham is just sucking on all the sheep right now. This is a feast for the village, but both of these players getting a pretty solid amount. Not that the sheep matters too much on this map, as we know, this is water, and we do need to see some water shenanigans. So let's hop on out and quickly see what the dock situation is. So we have a dock over on from Wham and from Scatterbrained, both of these going for the very standard play on this map. The map that we have here is not something we very often see anyone deviating from. Ooh, and let me switch the sides of the players. So we don't see people deviating from these that often, because you do need the water, and it does give you so much of an advantage. It's not a choice like we saw in the previous map.
Exactly right. And I do have to say, the one thing that does surprise me here a little bit is the lack of Dark Age play by either of these factions that we have in play, Mongols or OTD. It's an interesting situation because I understand it to some extent, because the pawns are, relatively safe compared to Kawasan, right? Each player has access to 2 pawns on their side. Naturally, that lends itself to a defender's advantage, where even if one player opens spear first and looks to put aggression, the other player can potentially just go barracks straight after the dock and then even match the numbers on the defensive. And then it becomes a tricky situation where your opponent already has a dock that they can defend and you do not. So that might be the reason for it. As to which civilization is favored in the Dark Age, I think it's a bit tough to say. I would say Mongols, typically, because of the double production. Ultimately, of course, OTD does have those stronger spearmen, but, that isn't necessary enough to offset the economic advantage of the double production. However, that won't be the case either here, right? They're both just going to handshake on these docks here. They're both going to get their fishing going up nice and quick. Wham already going onto the gold, Scatterbrained as well, just a little bit ahead of him here, as Wham actually invested slightly more into those fishing ships, and already a little bit of deer laming going on here.
Now, you just want to make sure that your opponent doesn't get all these deer for free, even if you do make a play for their water, and shut it down, because you want to make sure that you can be ahead on all fronts. Yesterday, with Scatterbrained on this map, I think a lot of us were wondering, why is the water not getting shut down? So Scatterbrained definitely might have taken a page out of that book, but we'll see if he can get past the I need to deny resources to actually also I need to deny water. And it does look to be the case. Scatterbrained is going for that counter dock pretty close to the other dock as well, and he knows. Wham knows.
Yeah, although that's exactly what you want here, Scatterbrained, right? You want that dock to be close to the enemy dock, specifically for when that arrow slit comes in here for Scatterbrained, which of course is very, very handy for Mongols to get, thanks to the passive stone that they get anyway from the Uvu. It means that any ship that pops out of that dock, whether it be a fishing ship or a fighting ship, will instantaneously get hit by an arrow slit, and The notable thing with arrow slits, although the damage isn't that high, and it's not like the attack speed is that high, is notably the range that is very, very high on that arrow slit. It makes it so difficult to actually even fight up against any kind of naval force next to that dock. And so that's going to have great coverage over that pawn. It's going to completely deny that deep sea fish there, as well as any fighting below that pawn from Wham. It means any fighting ship that does come out of that dock will straight away be slightly tenderized in terms of damage, so to say. Age up comes through. Deer Stones is on the way, so potentially some Khan's Hunters might be on the cards for him as well in combination with the Mangudai, which is something we have seen on this map before, namely from Wham and Puppy Paw. Because the wood lines are so small, it's a prime target to deal damage with that Falcon. And already tower on the way for Wham here on the gold.
Now, getting a tower this early tells us he wants to protect this at all costs because of the Khan, most likely. The thing about having the Khan, it's not doing a lot of damage, but every little bit makes this quite hard to handle because
it's so annoying.
It's just so hard to handle. I can't imagine any player enjoying this. This means you have to invest in it, even if you're not getting early game aggression on your side. The Khan is the aggression. Now we instantly see the naval arrows that's coming out, but the question is he going to make a ship on top of this as well? So with the Spearman, he definitely responded correctly here, because if you can get that Spearman here, you're already forcing your opponent to invest yet another ship, and he doesn't just get to get that free arrow slits upgrade, basically free for the Mongols. But we'll see now, because Wham is looking at making units. We'll see if that's going to be a few more.
It's a good choice for sure, because we see he's prioritizing that land investment over that water investment, specifically because of the arrow slits. But as I said, that demo, unnoticed by Wham, takes down not only the Springboard ship, but also the fishing ship that was repairing these Springboard ships. So great value gained there by Scatterbrained already. Wham, on the other hand, is investing into Spearmen, and the scout helping those Spearmen to torch down this dock. It might go on fire just before these Mangudai come in to push away the Spearmen, which is kind of all that Wham needs here. As long as the dock is on fire, which it definitely will be actually, then the dock will eventually burn down, right? So good timing here by Wham, just before those Mangudai fully push him away. This is very, very good for him. But you can see that close deep sea fish there is just completely out of bounds for now. But yeah, the dock's going to go down. However, I would say definitely gained value here.
Oh, he gained value, all he needed. He's got a villager coming this way though, and the scout just goes back and does more damage too. I wonder if Scatterbrained expected that poor scout to help in the mission here, but now the Mangudai is going to make this a little bit harder. The thing is, this is Order of the Dragon, right? You get towers, you have chunky villages, and you're usually pretty okay. Now the problem with these wood lines is once the Khan gets a little glimpse onto the other side, he will just keep being on your wood lines. So this means that you have to invest a lot more into defenses. Now, a potential spot that would be quite safe is over here. And you can see he knows he needs to get a little bit of a defense on these towers. Otherwise, these guys are going to make his life hell. But because of this, he's just going castle. We'll see if Scatterbrained follows suit, because Scatterbrained still has a lot on wood.
Yeah, there might be a reinvestment into fishing ships here, either on his own secondary home pond or Wham's home pond in the north instead. We'll have to see. That is what the wood indicates. Or it might just be prepping production ahead of time here for him. But you can see just the impact that these Khan's Hunters and Mangudai have here. Wham invested so much into these double outposts. The two lines of Wham walls, as he's come to be known for, without a doubt. But it's not enough. Like, the Falcon can still just be put over the wood line, and because it's so small, he's still just able to shoot. Wham is just forced to place the lumber camp right next to the outpost, and even then, the Khan is still in range. So Wham also has to get arrow slits to be able to defend this position and keep gathering wood. It's so oppressive, and Scatterbrained, parked on both sides of the wood line. I can't state how annoying this is, but it's so effective, and Scatterbrained is doing a great job of utilizing it. However, that dock, in combination with these units, was quite an investment, enough so to slow down Scatterbrained a fair bit, as Wham is already on his way to the castle age.
So with this, he was able to stop any stone mining, I say, and then he moves away. The moment he moves away, this becomes a more viable spot to defend. And I don't think Scatterbrain knows how much that small decision impacted this game, because now the gold will be safe. And these guys are just not getting any damage done that they need to actually shut this down. Because yes, it's oppressive, it's annoying, but once this is reinforced, he's going to be able to get that wood he needs.
Exactly right, yeah, the arrow slits, although the towers will protect the gold just fine, it's about the wood line as well, right? He needs the arrow slits to protect at least that side of the wood line in turn, right? And that will be coming in now for him. So nicely timed by Wham to spot those Mango Dying Constantly moving away and then using that space to get the stone required. Already gilded men-at-arms in production for Wham, and this early timing is really nice for him because, you know, he can get that Burgrave working ASAP in his favor and it will just churn out value. Every single unit produced from that Burgrave gives huge value thanks to that discount for him. You essentially want to have 100% uptime on that Burgrave if you can. Upgrades coming in for Wham as well. Double Broadaxe as well as Golden Cuirass as well coming for him for that men-at-arms tankiness. And Scatterbrained is going to be a crossbow follow-up, so this is kind of exactly what we expected here from Scatterbrained, right? He's going to look to get up those upgrades, look to get up a decent number of crossbows as well as outposts to pad himself into going for that Karganet Palace age up, which, I mean, he's already getting fairly close.
This is disgusting. We are getting to see it, guys. Remember how I wished for a fast Imperial and said, oh, but it's probably not viable. There's no chance he would do something like that because Order of the Dragon is just so good. But no. He's gonna go for the fast Imperial. The thing is, if you go for the fast Imperial and Order of the Dragon just tries to go right through you, they will do some good damage. And now the Burgrave is pumping at the moment. You can see he's also going for Military Academy, so he's planning on staying here and building units. So I don't see any expansion onto another little pond because Scatterbrained doesn't need it. He doesn't need it when he is going to be getting free units on his side. Now, these bad boys, they are oppressive. They also need to make sure that Wham stays in his base, and they're doing a pretty good job at that. The thing is, they need to start thinking about going from the backside because there are more units coming out pretty soon. It looks like they will use their mobility and try to kite, but once Wham gets some crossbows, this is going to be a lot harder for him.
Exactly. The crossbows are just so impeccable in defensive situations like this. And against men-at-arms especially, which is exactly what Wham wants to make for that dive ability under these towers. And you can see just the timing is so oppressive here. I mean, Wham is just now able to leave his base after getting enough of a mass to challenge these Mango Dying Khan's hunters, but already Scatterbrained is on his way. Although I gotta say, the massive crossbows is not very impressive, and Scatterbrained may be greeting a little bit by camping on that relic. He might lose a few here if he's not careful, but he does notice and pull back in time. What I'm particularly curious about is the level of outpost investment we have here for Scatterbrained. We know there's one outpost at least on that gold mine, 2 even in fact, but that gold mine is going to run out pretty soon here. And if it comes to a dive under the TC for Scatterbrained, we have to see the same outpost underneath the TC where he plans and the Uvu, because if he doesn't, there's no outpost. This could be a little bit scary for him because there's a lot of gilded units on the field already.
Now, these are going to be scary for now. The thing is just, he is going to be able to shut this down. He's got Warrior Monks though, so Warrior Monks not the best one to get in the early game, but it's also not a hui pal when these bad boys are at the front side. They will be able to heal some of these units, but he'll probably be hoping for a good spawn for the next one. The crossbows are doing good work at keeping this busy. These bad boys standing around, not really sure what to do at the moment, but the crossbows are trading okay. The problem is just Wham has a lot of units here. So next up though, he's got some elite horse archers, and now all of a sudden the palace is going to start talking.
You're going to start talking indeed. I mean, already 2 warrior monks are out, which, yes, not the best unit, but they are in fact quite a reliable frontline here for Scatterbrain, as they're taking no extra damage from anything except spearmen, as they are a mounted unit, but they are not armored or light, counting as religious units instead. Now, he does get a batch of horse archers, which is also a pretty effective unit to get here as well on the defense. Not the best, but definitely pretty up there as well. And Wham is doing a good job of controlling the gold here, I must say. Oh, and this is a big spot on the gold mine. Scatterbrain does not realize, does not move away in time, distracted with the Mangudai. A lot of villages are going to go down here. 8 already killed by Wham in this game. A 9th one goes down. And these villages are running for their lives. And the truth is, they're running towards the outposts, but those outposts, they are so exposed, Wham, and more units are going to be coming here, and I'm not sure whether how long he can hold this spot.
Now the units, they do change their track, but look at these. They are actually diving the towers. And the thing is, these towers are squishy. That's the bad part about playing Mongols, right? You don't get to just burn, or you don't get to reinforce your towers. The thing is, though, the horse archers are out, and this is going to start doing some damage because those units cannot find their friends. They're stuck here at the bottom. They're picking off a villager or two, but they are not able to reinforce on time. We've got palace guards here too, and they're gonna run right past the spearmen and get onto the back line. And yes, Mongols did lose quite a few villagers, but this is Imperial Age Mongols. This is like Lancaster. If he's got 10 farms, and in this case, if he's got 1 Shogunate, there's hope.
There's hope it did. I mean, you see the units already were able to push off that initial military mass there from Wham, and Scatterbrain actually cleans all of those southern units up, so big value gain there for him, actually. That's the risk you take with Wham here, splitting your forces like that, and essentially what was half of his army just gets completely cleaned up. He did gain a lot of value there, a lot of villages did go down, but you can see already the mass for Scatterbrain is just building so fast here. And if you look at the economic deficit, it might not look that severe, but you gotta remember most of those are gilded villages for Wham, so they're way more potent than regular villages. And in this fight, it looks so favorable for Scatterbrained already. Wham is forced to back off.
The problem is Wham is nowhere near aging up either. He's got the eco on the water on one side. He's tapping out his wood line over here, and that's a very tiny one. He's going to need to think about the next one as well, and the problem is the next one is far forward. And there's going to be French knights on the board, and I don't know about you, Chief, but French knights coming towards my forward wood line, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
They will be Roost Knights, but not far off at all. It's pretty close, but I mean, I think already it's looking so hard for Wham. I mean, he's stabilized here. He's able to keep at least control on his third of the map, but the longer this goes, the better it is for Scatterbrain. That Kagana Palace will not stop producing units. Again, now we're getting some more Mangudai from Scatterbrain, the elite Mangudai, and it's something that's easy to forget, but every single one of these units that comes from the Kagana Palace is fully upgraded with all unique upgrades in turn for them. It is tremendous. So those knights, not only do they have Boyar's Fortitude, but they also have the pole axes as well for that additional damage. The Palace Guards have the additional move speed as well on top of them. And Horse Archers also have Boyar's Fortitude and the Gallop ability too. You can see the mass is just so severe for Scatterbrained already. Wham! Honestly, I think he's dead already.
Yeah, and he might be realizing this. The thing is, he's so far ahead with the resources or with villagers, right? He's theoretically, he should be okay. He's done things correctly. But the fact that Scatterbrain could be this aggressive just means that Wham is just not able to keep up. These crossbows are trading well, but not well enough, because these units are Imperial Age units, and look at that attack speed. Look at the amount of arrows flying. They're ignoring the men-at-arms and just focusing on the crossbows. And next up, villagers as well. Now that forward wood line is very questionable. We're getting a market here. And the moment you see Order of the Dragon going for a market, that's usually a warning sign. Palace Guards now, they're like, hey, I actually saw that there were some villagers here. Let me pay you a visit. And slicing everyone in half. We just say, let the bodies hit the floor, and he will not even need a Wham. He's just gonna go straight in with units.
This is absolutely insane to watch here. This is, I mean, I guess this is in some way payback for that House of Lancaster game that Wham put Scatterbrained through. He now gets to do a little bit of his own bullying in this game with some excessively powered economy here in the form of free units. 700 to 800 resources per minute in terms of elite upgraded units here for Scatterbrained. How do you offset this? You might think, well, there's gilded villages here for Wham. 800 resources per minute in terms of the most premium elite units you can have. It's so incredibly potent, and Wham, he found so many villager kills. I mean, what more could you really ask for? But it still looks so hopeless.
Wham got a little bit of gold coming in from the back, you know, with all these sacred sites sticking, and he's trying. You see 37 on food, but every bit of food he gets, or 54 on food now, every bit of food he gets, he just needs to reinvest in units. He doesn't even get to enjoy that Order of the Dragon late game. He's not going to get to the late game. Right now, all he has in front of him are very scary units, and next up is a Hui Pow to seal the deal. Now, Scatterbrained did lose all of the units that he got from the Shaganate Palace, but he's like, oh, actually, I'm not too worried about that. I'll just make new ones by waiting it out. So now these archers are going to be doing everything they can. And yes, they will get taken down by the men-at-arms, but they will be taking victims alongside them.
Scatterbrained now finding his own economic damage behind this is going to yield great results for him at this point in time. And further along we see it's 2 Hui Power now on the field for Scatterbrained here, but as we mentioned, the longer this goes, the worse it gets for Wham in this game number 4. Scatterbrained is looking pretty close to tying up the series at this point in time. Now, a hand cannoneer switch is being prepped for him behind this. And the elite archers as well, just doing great work as well up against the gilded archers from Wham, despite their additional scale archer skill armor that gives them additional armor against range units specifically. And the Hui Power is going to get repaired. A bit unfortunate for Scatterbrained to get 2 in a row here, but I mean, does it really matter? I think he's still just going to be able to trade so well.
Now, with all these university upgrades, it's actually paying off. It looks like the men-at-arms will be able to overpower these archers at the back, but the thing is, it's temporarily, because these archer ranges are making hand cannoneers. When you have this many resources, you get to make hand cannoneers. Hui Pal dropped a rock on this guy's head and he melted. But now, hand cannoneers are slowly going to start pushing back, and once hand cannoneers are out, it's really hard to take them down. You see Wham already making the counter unit, gilded veteran archers, but those veteran archers are just going to suck when it comes to the palace guards again. So you just have rock, paper, scissors, but the problem is Scatterbrained has all of them, and Wham has to choose with his limited resources.
Exactly right. You've said it perfectly there, Wham. And I mean, you know, it's essentially a roulette of counters here. What is he going to get next? Now we see another batch of 3 elite Rus knights in queue, which Wham, I mean, he has 6 crossbows on the field, but yeah, you know, I mean, there's a fair bit of archers out here for Scatterbrained. It's not really enough to hold here. The Hui Power now is going to start working on Wham's infrastructure. And I gotta say, Wham has been doing a great job of leveraging his economy to try to hold this, but it's just a losing battle in the long run. The destroyed value says everything you need to see. 10,000 ahead, Scatterbrained. Just these trades in terms of tech are just too favorable, and with that, GG is called. Wham knows it, despite his best efforts. It's just too much.
He put up a pretty good fight, but he got a taste of his own medicine, as we saw before with him on Lancaster going for that fast Imperial. Scatterbrained served him counterplay on a platter. And honestly, this is what we needed. This is the pure karmic revenge from Scatterbrained. But now, Scatterbrained has his work cut out for him. And honestly, I don't think it was on our bingo cards that Scatterbrained and Wham would be 2-2 in a series.
One of Scatterbrain's best performances, without a doubt, so far in his pro career in Age of Empires 4. Not only taking out Numudan in a tight set 3-2 earlier, who many had penned as favored, but now going toe-to-toe against Wham, a seasoned veteran and, you know, firm top 8 player historically in Age of Empires 4. also now finding himself tied up against Scatterbrained and forced to be taken to a game number 5 here. And what better place to determine a Whamen than Dry Arabia?
Oh, Dry Arabia, the most standard of standard maps. And honestly, Dry Arabia with the sheep, we are going to be seeing now pure sheep play because this is what we needed. We need to see these guys because Wham has been drowning in the sheep until he donated all of his. Let's go see what the sheep counter is going to be at, especially at the start of the game, because I feel like the sheep have played a big role in these last few matches. So that's why I'm mentioning this on Dry Arabia so specifically. It's just Malians versus Zushi though. Both of these civs like pro scouting, right? But Zushi a little bit more than Malians. Now, you said that Malians deals pretty well with Zushi. Do you think that's the case in this pro scouting meta as well?
They can have a pretty decent chance, I think, against Jushi. Marlins is one of those civs that, although they might not be the best of the best in terms of cream of the crop, I think that they're tier right below, right? I mean, and they have some decent answers against some of these top sets, specifically because of their unique mechanics, right? Their passive income, that is not to be underestimated. Their timings revolving around cows, but also the possibility of what we've seen a lot recently, those poison javelin Mansath javelin throws, right? They are such a cost-effective unit in terms of trading that you essentially either need overwhelming horseman numbers to deal with or siege to actually even trade favorably for them. Not only is the damage over time really, really potent, but also the kiting, the move speed, allows them to pick and choose fights however they wish against most units in the game, and that can really pay dividends in the long run. In Jushi, they have some really oppressive, powerful timings. Relating to pro scouts and of course especially those Dali horses when it comes to that castle age, but they are limited by that deer, and once that deer is out, Marika, they can find themselves really struggling against a civ that has more reliable passive income like the Malians here. So interestingly that Wham doesn't opt for the China here. I guess he's a bit reticent maybe about being found on the defensive, as you often would be with China against something like Jushi or Ottomans for that matter. You can often be found on the defensive depending how you play it. But instead, he opts for Malians instead here.
Now, getting Malians is something I'm really excited about because I don't think we've seen Malians as much in the play currently, except when they go for Farimba. And I honestly want to see if the cow boom is the choice because of this pro scouting situation that you've just mentioned. People do run out of food, and that gives you that reliable income. But the Farimba has been so prominent in these top games. And I don't know if it's just because it's new and people don't know how to deal with the javelin throwers yet, or it is just actually better. So where do you land on that?
I think it's this interesting situation of economy versus army power, right? Typically we see Farimba in combination with Pro Scouts. Now that's not to say that Pro Scouts is isolated from Cowboom. We've seen plenty of Pro Scouts into Cowboom as well, just to be able to get to it faster, produce more in feudal while still adding cows, right? But without a doubt that the Malian army is really strong when you do have access to those Mansa javelins, especially. Now, Freeborn and Mansa Musafadi have their place as well, but that can be quite tricky to figure out when and how to utilize them. But you have the reliable food income with the Fulani Corral. But it can make it tricky to withstand some timings when it comes to castle ages from some of these tempo-orientated civs like Jushi, for that matter, or like Ottomans would, for example, if that was Scatterbrain's other choice. Whereas, if you want to, I guess, play a little bit safer, you could then go for the Mansa instead to make sure that, okay, well, I'm going to have these really strong units that I can definitely defend with. And then maybe I'll look to push out, get some damage done, and offset any kind of food deficit I might lack from not having the Fulani Corral. And of course, I mean, you can still make cows even without the corral. So you don't miss out on too much if you do go for them.
Yeah, I can definitely see the endgame compositions also looking so much different if they do end up going for that. But now, guys, they are waiting for us. in the game. So, ladies and gents, it's time for us to head on in. Get ready.
Here we go. The long anticipated game number 5 in the Masters of Steel qualifier number 2 between Wham and Scatterbrained. The series is tied 2-2 here in this determining match, as either player has their game to lose at this point in time, and whoever loses is out and eliminated from qualifier number 2 and will have to make their mark and try their best in the next qualifier, as we are on Dry Arabia. And what better map to determine this set between these two players, as Dry Arabia, typically the most fair of maps, the most standard of maps. It is where typically the better player does win if all things go to plan. Wham loading into Dry Arabia, piloting the Malians in the color blue, facing an opponent that might be putting up more of a fight than he anticipated, in the form of Scatterbrained, playing in the color yellow, playing as one of his favorite civilizations, the Jushi. So both players opting for civilizations that they deem very, very strong and are very capable with. Both have proved themselves on these civilizations, so very cinematic finish here to our set. And as we load in, we will see what is on the cards. Plenty of possibilities here in this matchup. I think this is a tricky matchup to play for both of these civs. There's a lot of vulnerabilities to exploit here for both. Naturally, you have the pit mine vulnerability here for Malians, which can become under a lot of pressure. And, you know, it's not exactly forward, but it's not at the back either here for Wham, right? So damage could potentially be done. And Jushi, you know, they have the explosion of income, but once that food runs out, they become quite vulnerable themselves.
Now, that is one of those things that you have to ask yourself, am I going to be able to keep my gold safe? Because with Malians, we know how much investment this takes, and it does take a while to pay off. Jushi is a civilization that can pump out so many units so quickly, and if you are not ready, this is so dire. Though at the same time, he's got the second gold on the other side, I mean, in the same line, right? So when the shutdown does come, it's going to be impossible to get this back. I say this, but at the same time, if we look over here on Scatterbrain's side, he is also a very one-sided gold man. So the same can be said for Wham. If he shuts this down, it's really hard to get this back. Now, I'm a little bit excited to see what the pro scouting is going to look like, because obviously Malians has spicy scouts. They get to do a little bit of extra damage and take down anything in their path. But at the same time, Jushi, when opening with a stable, you get those horsemen out and they will be able to handle this well. But I'm excited to see what both of these guys decide to do in response to their opponent's pro scouting. So definitely going to be taking some notes from this, because honestly, this is how we learn, right? So this is a pretty juicy meditation garden, though. I'm really glad for Scatterbrain in this, because that's a lot of wood and double gold in the range as well. So yeah, I think he's going to be a very happy camper with this.
Definitely juicy meditation gardens here for him, right? Nice little spawn for him as well. However, he does sacrifice food on that meditation gardens, which is typically the top choice for most players. He could have pivoted slightly further north to get himself a good bit of food as well. Look at that. That's also a really, really nice one for him. But he might have either not scouted it in time. We can maybe have a look at the perspective. I'm quite curious if maybe he just didn't see it, or if he just opted to put it slightly closer, avoid more idle time. And already we have an interesting start here from Scatterbrained. No stable, no pro scout as of yet. Instead, he opts to open with that barracks. And interestingly as well for Wham, wheelbarrow opener. So it might just be a complete skip on pro scouts for him.
I did not think we would experience the day that we don't see pro scouting, and I don't want to jinx it. I think we jinxed it. He's probably going to go pro scouts pretty soon. You see that gold stacking up. The spearmen, they're coming out though, and they're going straight across to the other side. Now, this is interesting because this is going to make Wham have to respond, and he responds with a stable. So when you see that stable, even though we're not expecting pro scouting, this does still raise the question mark of, is he going to be able to deal with these spears this early on? Especially 3 of them. Because 3, You can't ignore them and just let them burn down your houses.
No, you definitely can't ignore them, right? And stable is a bit of an interesting follow-up here. I'm not sure if Wham actually scouted the barracks from Scatterbrained at this point in time.
He's about to.
Well, he definitely will know now, but he doesn't know if there's any spares out yet. And yeah, I mean, these 3 early spares, and the scout's gonna put a little bit of pressure here, especially with that stable opening from Wham. Definitely a rough spot to find yourself in, and I do wonder whether this is a sofa follow-up here from Wham. It is going to be the Warrior Scouts upgrade for him, so he's going to look to be a little bit annoying with them. Whether he produces any more, we're just going to have to see. But yeah, I mean, you see archer range rushed up by Wham. He knows he has to respond to this straight away. So definitely a couple of archers going to be coming out, or maybe javelin throwers instead. But already, Wham, the greed actually is quite incredible. Already going for that second pit mine.
So going for that second pit mine with a villager that's not even half HP. Oh, actually, just above half HP. Sorry, guys, math. And now you're gonna open this up to actually being harassed. But never mind, never mind. The boys have arrived. Oh, singular boy. They look to be going to the other side, though. And this villager will need to have light feet. And he does so. He's running back home. He's got wheelbarrow as well. So he will be able to make it out alive. But Scatterbrained now starting the pro scouting. The warrior scout just not able to get the damage he needs. Because there are spears in the mix. And it just becomes so hard to actually shut this down. But Scatterbrained's cooking something else, guys. He's cooking a little palace guard. And why is this so dire, you may ask? Because palace guards, they are tanky. And you having a bunch of archers is not going to be a good answer to what that is.
Yes, initially definitely won't be. I mean, the Palace Guard in these early skirmishes are going to do great work up against these Warrior Scouts and the Archers as well on the offensive. Now, once that Archer count does build up, as well as Javelins, it will get much worse for the Palace Guard, but you need so much more investment here as Wham to deal with these Palace Guards. And, you know, I mean, he does already have a stable. Sofa will deal very effectively with the Palace Guard if he does choose to go into them. We'll have to see. Horseman out here as well, catching this archer here. Nice little pickup there, stopping the pit mine yet again, Scatterbrained has. And Donzo now in Q4 Wham as well, in anticipation of the Horseman. Scatterbrained just making pretty much every kind of unit. The only thing he didn't make yet is an archery ranged for some Juganu, but Juganu can be tough to find value with here, especially against something like Javelin throws.
And it looks like Scatterbrained is set on doing some proper damage to these pit mines, or at least slowing Malians down. Probably the safest thing he could do. And these archers, again, just taking a bit of damage. Don't think he will be losing too much here because the Donzo has joined the party. He gets one, but this could be very expensive for him if he loses this to the Donzo. Another archer going down, but the one horse will make it back to safety. Now, Wham's still thinking about shutting this down. And he's doing a lot better now with these numbers.
Yes, it's a nice little idea here by Wham, right? He skips Pro Scouts entirely, but still opts to make just a few extra Warrior Scouts here, just to be really annoying, right? Because an annoying thing with Marlins, an annoying situation you can find yourself here as Marlins, I mean, is, you know, you might have a great economy, you can start adding cows, which Wham is already on his way quite firmly in doing, already 7 out more in production as we speak. Is that the lack of map control can make it very easy for your opponent to just tunnel vision without consequences on dealing as much damage to you as possible, taking most of the day, and just going carnage whenever you want. So these Warrior Scouts give him at least a little bit of agency in distracting Scatterbrained and getting at least some, forcing him to multitask more than he'd like.
And we see Wham eating the deer himself. This is a pretty fine way to ensure that your opponent does not get all the deer, especially when you've got a little tower here. Bringing more of the boys over because he might realize, hey, I probably need to think about getting up to castle a little bit quicker. We now have Shaolin Monastery being rushed up with 10. And Myriad, are we going to see Lancers?
Yes, indeed. I mean, the double stable tells you all you need to know. It is going to be mass Lancers on the cards here for Scatterbrained, at least initially in this castle age. And I've got to say, Scatterbrained played this early game really nicely. Getting those early initial spares out to force a ranged mass here from Wham, which ultimately he will be virtually useless against these Lancers. And I've got to say, this is a really sharp and sudden castle timing here from Scatterbrained that I'm sure maybe took Wham a little bit by surprise here. Now, the notable thing here for Wham as the Marlins is the Marlins typically one of the civs that doesn't care too much typically about a deficit in tech, especially when they have the answers necessary, which normally they definitely do. More and more Donzos in queue here for Wham. You can see by the macro, he's still just adding cows. He is slowly trending towards the castle age here, but he's not too worried about staying in the feudal age. There looks to be a second barracks being dropped, which is definitely a prudent choice. You want to get more Donzos out, potentially some Musafadis out as well, just to make sure that this defense is relatively straightforward. And Scatterbrained, I mean, he essentially made his idea completely clear. He has to deal a lot of damage here, or kill Wham outright before his food runs out, otherwise the cow economy will essentially run away with the game. So Scatterbrained, he is essentially all in.
He is on a timer. And Wham is aware. He's like, let me wall that one up for you, brother. Your Lancers are not going to get here all at once. This is not going to be easy entry. The Lancers here, they do take some damage, and they take quite a bit before going down. But with these amounts, he's just able to shut this down, and there's no counter for it just yet. He does pick up a few villages, but as Malians, it's probably okay for you to lose a few villages when your cow economy is this thorough. We already have 13 cows, and now the Fulani is going to make this a lot smoother for him.
Yes, that's a really nice pickup there by Scatterbrained, which he definitely needed after essentially just throwing away 2 Lancers away completely for free there. Quick war coming in here on the north by Wham, but it is going to get interrupted just in time by that Lancer as the Fulani Corral is rushed up prematurely without cows. So Wham prioritizing that timing over the additional income from the cows, which could be a prudent choice, as with this Palace Guard switch coming in here for Scatterbrained in turn to once again try to surprise Wham. However, you know, theoretically Wham could just make Musafadis to deal with both of these armored units here. But I gotta say, I think this timing for Scatterbrained didn't really work out the way he intended. And the damage, 5 worker kills is not bad at all. But as you mentioned yourself, Maker, the cows, they're really going to offset that. And I think Scatterbrained has a pretty tough game ahead of him.
And we can switch to income per minute now, because we're about to see that thing skyrocket. It doesn't feel like Scatterbrained got as much damage as he needed here yet. We still have a few villages out here that are going to be right for the picking. But again, Palace Guards, they're not going to do too well against this just yet. And now, Sofas are in the mix. This is going to start becoming counter-raiding, and a lot of food is required to keep this thing going, but it just feels like there is not the numbers to handle that. Spearmen now, or Donzos at least, doing a little bit of damage to the Palace Guards. Palace Guards, they're able to survive for a while, but again, not getting any damage as they need against this Malians.
Exactly. I mean, Scatterbrain's unit production has essentially completely halted here, which is quite surprising. We see a very large bank in resources for him. It makes me wonder what he's cooking here in this situation. Even now, there's just no units in production for him. 900 food in the bank, 1300 gold. I really wonder what he's planning here. Some upgrades being added now. Meanwhile, Wham, it is going to be the Sofa, the unit of choice. Such a potent unit here for the Malians. Once that imported armor comes in for them, they can be an excellent raiding unit, a great frontline unit, and just a really, really hard one to deal with for most civilizations. And yeah, imported armor already in. So these Sofas now have more armor than a regular knight. On top of being faster as well. So Scatterbrained, in combination with the Donzos, is really going to be in some trouble here. But again, there's still no unit investment here from Scatterbrained. He did rush up a keep in turn, but to what end?
It feels like this keep is supposed to protect his economy, but all it's going to protect is, yeah, sure, the wood. But what about the rest of everything else? You can see he's floating a lot of resources. He was considering going Imperial, but was he? It feels so strange because with Zushi, going for Imperial in this scenario does not give you anything you would need to actually survive a push like this. And it feels like Wham is right now just on top of him, and he will not have an answer to actually shutting down anything that's here. Like you said, these Sofas are chunky right now, and he cannot afford to lose villages. He's not Malians. Malians is on the other side, and they don't have 39 idle villages.
Yeah, I'm just really, really confused by Scatterbrained. It seemed like once he hit Castle Age, just churned out a bunch of Lancers quite scarily fast, and got a decent bit of damage, but also lost a fair few of them doing it. It seemed like he was just really confused on how to proceed. You imagine yourself, it almost looked like he was going Imperial, but to what end? I mean, he played Mongols last game, not this game. There's no free units to be gained from Castlage here for Jushi's legacy, and frankly, I mean, he's dead.
Yeah, I think this is again what we spoke about before, is just that tournament experience. And Wham, he's a veteran. He's been here a while, and Scatterbrained taking these games off of him, so impressive. Really proud to see how far he's come. But honestly, I think a lot of players are going to have a lot more respect for him. Scatterbrained not tapping out. He's making Wham work for it. And, but yes, he may have cooked this just a little bit too hard and to the wrong end, hoping to try and outplay his opponent. But in the end, there's no farm transition. The food is starting to get barren, and all of the food that's left is under siege right now. But you can see trying to get a few spearmen out to just miraculously take down all those sofas. The problem is just the sofas are everywhere, and they're going to shut down anything you try to do. There's the beast now, trying his best, but once they get on top of him, he's going to melt. Poor guy.
Yeah, a bit of an unfortunate end here for Scatterbrained. I mean, I really liked the idea initially, but it just goes to show if you just can't get enough damage, as I mentioned, a bit of an all-in situation. If you can't get damage done with those lances, there's just very little recovery possibility in this situation as Jushi, I would say, up against what is soon to be a full cow boom here from Wham. But despite that tremendously impressive effort from Scatterbrained in this set, taking what others would consider a far more favored player up to a 5th game, really making Wham sweat and having very impressive performances in his wins and even in the losses, really making Wham work for it. It will end for him, however, here most likely in this game number 5. But there's still another qualifier to go, and Scatterbrained is definitely an opponent I'm a bit reticent about meeting.
Scatterbrained is someone who is going to strike fear into the hearts of new players, and they're actually going to need to scout and try to figure out what Scatterbrained has up his sleeve. He's getting more spearmen, hoping that this will be enough. But Wham, he's planning to wham him pretty hard. Because, you know, when you have 2 whams, they can break through most buildings.
Yes, the 37 food per minute income that Scatterbrained was sitting for a minute there spells quite a bit of doom for him without a doubt. When you can't even really produce villages reliably anymore, it's always a pretty desperate situation to be in for Doubt. He's got to look to make a bit of a Hail Mary Nesta B's defense here, which, you know, can be quite potent normally, but I would say the damage is quite severe at this point in time as well. I'm just going into the tried and true, reliable old Marlin composition, Poison Archers in combination with those Sofa. Very, very strong composition from the Marlins, one they've become notorious for over the years so far. And at this point, it's almost just an A-click to finish this game from Wham, really. As long as he doesn't take some horrific Nesta B shots, he can just kind of keep poking and prodding as Scatterbrained, chipping away until he's really dead. And I mean, Scatterbrained, he needs beyond a miracle at this point.
He's putting those villagers in the DC to try and keep it alive. Repairing now, but the archers have their new targets. And pulling back, he says, Wham, if you want this, we're gonna go in fighting, brother. The Wham being tired out by Scatterbrained, trying to get every bit of sweat out of Wham's forehead. But these Nesta Bees are barely even making a dent in this army.
You know, I have to feel for Scatterbrained somewhat because this is actually becoming a real trend for him. I have seen, this must be like the 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th time I see it from him, where he just has a tremendous performance against a player who is really, really favored for, really favored. I think we've seen it against CSO a while back. We have also seen it against, I believe, Lucifron, but I may be mistaken. But oh no, against Vortex actually, he had a really good showing, taking him to game number 5 in qualifier number 1, I believe.
but he just falls short in that fifth game, always at the end. And it's, it must be such a tough position to be in. But despite that, it still demands ample respect. The Scatterbrained is eliminated from qualifier number 1. Wham advances, but fantastic showing from both players.
That was beautiful. And I think it shows that finally the gap is starting to close between these top players. And finally, we're getting a little bit more competition here.